I walked into the investment firm where my son-in-law worked, and he laughed. "Security escort this gentleman out," he wandered in from the wrong building. His colleagues gathered to witness my humiliation. But then his managing partner appeared and said, "Mr. Carter, your $30 million portfolio transfer is approved. And you," he pointed at my son-in-law, "clear out your desk. My name is Reginald Carter. I am 71 years old. And before I tell you how I bought a skyscraper just to teach an ungrateful boy a lesson, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are." The rain in Seattle does not wash away sins. It only makes the pavement slippery. I stood outside the revolving glass doors of Sterling Capital, clutching a plastic container wrapped in a slightly damp paper bag. Inside was jambalaya, my late wife Beatrice's recipe. It was spicy, warm, and smelled like home. It was my daughter Nia's 30th birthday today. I had woken up at 4 in the morning to slow cook the sausage and shrimp just the way she liked it when she was a little girl. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw an old black man in a double-breasted charcoal suit that was cut in 1995. The fabric was high-quality wool, but the style was wide in the shoulders and loose in the pants. To the young sharks inside this building, I looked like a relic. I looked like someone who clipped coupons and took the bus because he had to, not because he wanted to help the environment. They saw the gray stubble on my chin and the cane in my left hand, and they assumed I was weak. They did not know that this suit was the exact one I wore the day I sold my logistics company for $100 million cash 10 years ago. They did not know that the cane concealed a blade I learned to use in the jungles of Vietnam. And they certainly did not know that I owned the holding company that insured this entire building. To them, I was just Reggie, the embarrassing father-in-law. I pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was a cathedral of capitalism, marble floors that cost more than my first house, abstract art that looked like spilled paint, and the silence, the kind of silence that money buys. I walked toward the reception desk, my cane tapping a steady rhythm on the marble. The receptionist, a young woman with a headset, did not even look up. "Excuse me, miss," I said, my voice deep and steady. She held up a finger, finishing a text message on her phone. Finally, she looked at me with bored eyes. "Deliveries are in the back, sir. The loading dock is on 4th Street. "I am not a delivery man," I said, placing the paper bag on the pristine white counter. "I am here to see Blake Sterling. He is a director on the 24th floor. She raised an eyebrow, looking at my wet hat and my old suit. "Do you have an appointment?" "I am his father-in-law," I said. She let out a short, skeptical breath through her nose. "One moment." She dialed a number, her eyes never leaving my face, watching me as if I were about to steal the pens from her jar. While I waited, the elevator banks opened. A group of men walked out. They were loud. They smelled of expensive cologne and entitlement. In the center of the pack was Blake, my son-in-law. He was 32 years old, white, with hair that was perfectly gelled and a suit that fit him like a second skin. He was laughing at something a colleague said, his head thrown back. He looked like a man who owned the world. "Blake," I called out. He stopped. The laughter died in his throat. He looked across the lobby and saw me standing there, dripping rainwater onto the expensive rug. His face did not light up with recognition or warmth. It twisted. It was a spasm of pure annoyance, followed immediately by shame. He said something to his colleagues, who all turned to look at me. Then he walked over, not with a welcoming stride, but with the aggressive march of a man trying to handle a problem. "Reginald," he hissed when he got close enough so only I could hear. "What the hell are you doing here?" I smiled, though the warmth in my chest was rapidly cooling. "It is Nia's birthday, Blake. I brought her lunch, jambalaya. I know you two are working late, so I thought I would bring a little celebration to you." I held out the bag. Blake did not take it. He looked around the lobby to see who was watching. His colleagues were whispering, smirking. "You cannot be here," Reginald Blake said, his voice rising just enough for his friends to hear. "This is a place of business. High-level business. We do not have time for picnics." "It is just lunch, Blake," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I will just go up, give it to her, and leave." "No," Blake snapped. He stepped into my personal space. He was tall, but he had never looked me in the eye. He looked at my forehead. "Look at you. You look like a vagrant. That suit smells like mothballs. You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing Nia." I tightened my grip on my cane. "Embarrassing?" I asked. "I paid for your wedding, Blake. I paid for the down payment on your house. That was charity." Blake spat. "And it does not buy you access to my office. Now give me that before you spill grease on the floor." He reached out and snatched the bag from my hand. He did not hold it. He did not look inside. He walked 3 steps to the nearest trash can and dropped it in. The thud of the container hitting the bottom of the metal bin echoed in my ears. It sounded like a gunshot. My wife recipe, the shrimp I had peeled at dawn, the love I had packed into that container. Trashed. "Go home," Reggie Blake said, wiping his hands on a silk handkerchief as if touching my bag had contaminated him. "Go back to your little house and watch TV. Leave the finance to the big boys." I stood there. I did not move. I did not blink. In my mind, I was back in the jungle tracking a tiger. You do not scream at the tiger. You wait. You watch. You find the weakness. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Sterling?" A security guard had appeared. He was a large man, his hand resting near his belt. "Yes, there is," Blake announced loudly, turning to his audience of colleagues. "This gentleman is confused. He thinks this is a soup kitchen. Please escort him out." He wandered in from the wrong building. Laughter erupted from the group of men in suits. They pulled out their phones. I saw the flashes. I was the entertainment for the day. The crazy old black man who thought he belonged in Sterling Capital. The guard stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." I looked at Blake. "One last chance." "You are making a mistake, son," I said softly. "Don't call me son," he sneered. "You are nothing to me but a burden. Now get out before I have you arrested for trespassing." Just then the elevator pinged again. Nia walked out. My heart leaped. My daughter. She looked beautiful in a cream-colored suit, her hair pulled back tight. She was looking down at a tablet, walking fast. "Nia," I called out. She stopped. She looked up. She saw the scene. She saw me standing wet and humiliated. She saw the security guard reaching for my arm. She saw her husband Blake smiling cruelly, and she saw the trash can where her birthday lunch sat. For a second, I saw the little girl I had carried on my shoulders. I saw the daughter who used to cry when I left for business trips. I waited for her to run to me. I waited for her to tell the guard to back off. I waited for her to slap her husband for his disrespect. But she did not. Her eyes darted around the lobby. She saw the managing partners watching. She saw the secretaries whispering. And then she did the thing that broke me. She reached into her purse, pulled out a pair of large sunglasses and put them on. She turned her head away, pretending she had not seen me, pretending she did not know the old man being evicted from the building. She walked toward the side exit, her heels clicking a fast retreat on the marble floor. The pain was physical. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut, my own blood. My Nia. She chose the lie over her father. She chose the illusion of prestige over the reality of love. The guard grabbed my arm. His grip was hard, unnecessary. "Let's go, Pops," he grunted. I shook him off. A quick, sharp movement of my shoulder that made him stumble back. I straightened my lapel. I adjusted my hat. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of command. It stopped the guard in his tracks. I looked at Blake one last time. He was still grinning, feeling victorious. He thought he had won. He thought he had thrown out the trash. "Enjoy your lunch, Blake," I said. Then I turned and walked out. I did not look back at the trash can. I did not look back at my daughter fleeing the scene. I walked through the revolving doors and back into the rain. The cold water hit my face, mixing with the heat of my rage. I walked 2 blocks away from the prying eyes of the investment bankers. I walked until I reached a quiet alleyway where a black sedan was waiting. It was not a taxi. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, the windows tinted so dark they looked like oil. I tapped on the glass. The driver, a man named Marcus, who had been with me since the 90s, jumped out and opened the door with an umbrella ready. "Mr. Carter," he said, looking at my wetsuit. Did it go well? I slid into the back seat. The leather was soft, the air smelled of cedar and leather. I took off my wet hat and tossed it on the seat next to me. I reached into the hidden pocket of my jacket and pulled out a phone. It looked like an old brick phone from 20 years ago, but the internals were encrypted satellite technology. "It did not go well, Marcus," I said. "It went perfectly. I dialed a number I had not called in 5 years. It rang once. Sarah Jenkins," a voice answered. Sharp. Professional. "Sarah, it is Reggie." There was a pause. Then the tone of the lawyer who had helped me build my empire came through. "Reggie, you have been quiet. Is everything okay?" "No," I said, watching the rain streak down the window of the Rolls-Royce. "I need you to open the Pandora file." Reggie, are you sure? Sarah asked. That file is the nuclear option. I am sure, I said. I want you to look into the ownership structure of the building at 400 4th Street. Sterling Capital. I do not need to look into it, Sarah said. You own the debt on that building, Reggie. Through the shell company in the Cayman Islands. You bought the mortgage bonds 3 years ago when the developer was going under. Remember, I smiled. A cold, hard smile. I remembered. I had bought it to secure Nia future to make sure her husband firm always had a landlord who would never evict them. I had done it out of love. Now I would use it for war. Good, I said. Call the bank. Foreclose on the commercial lease immediately. Find every clause, every loophole. I want to own the physical space they stand on by the end of the day, Reggie, Sarah warned. This will cost millions in penalties to execute this fast. I do not care about the cost, I said. I want to buy the building. I want to buy the firm debts. And Sarah, yes, Reggie. Find out who Blake Sterling owes money to. Personal debts. Gambling debts. I saw the way his hands shook when he wasn't holding a drink. Find the sharks. I will find them, she said. And one more thing, I said, looking back toward the skyscraper that pierced the gray Seattle sky. Prepare a transfer. $30 million. Liquid. $30 million, Sarah asked. For what I am going to become Sterling Capital biggest client, I said. I am going to walk in there tomorrow not as a father-in-law with a lunchbox, but as a god. And then I am going to burn it all down. I hung up the phone. Marcus looked at me in the rearview mirror. Where to, boss? Back to the cottage. No, I said. The cottage was my disguise, my humble little home where I played the part of the retired grandpa. I was done playing. Take me to the penthouse, Marcus, and stop at a tailor on the way. I need a new suit. This one smells like betrayal. As the car pulled away, I looked at my phone. A text message came in from Nia. Dad, please do not come to the office again. You are embarrassing us. We will send you some money for groceries next week. Just stay home. I deleted the message. They thought I was a stray dog looking for scraps. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out that the man they kicked out into the rain was the man who controlled the weather. The game had begun. And unlike Blake, I never bluffed. The cottage was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. It was a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of town with peeling white paint and a porch that sagged slightly on the left side. To the outside world, this was where Reginald Carter, the retired truck driver, lived out his final days on a meager pension. To me, it was a theater stage, a carefully constructed set designed to filter out people who only loved money. I sat in my favorite armchair, which was upholstered in a faded floral fabric that had seen better days. I had changed out of the $10,000 bespoke suit I had worn in the city earlier. Now I was wearing a beige cardigan with a missing button and corduroy trousers that were slightly too short. I looked at my hands. They were strong hands, hands that had strangled enemies in the jungle and shaken hands with presidents. But tonight I forced them to tremble. I practiced the shake, the rhythmic tremor of a man losing control of his motor functions. It was a disguise I had perfected over the last 3 years. Headlights swept across the living room wall through the thin curtains. They were here. I heard the aggressive crunch of tires on gravel. Blake drove his leased BMW like he drove his life. Too fast and without regard for the terrain. The front door opened without a knock. Blake did not believe in knocking on doors he considered beneath him. He strode in, bringing a gust of cold night air with him. Nia followed a few steps behind. She looked pale. Her eyes were red-rimmed, likely from crying in the car, but she kept her chin high. She was trying to maintain the facade of the supportive wife. I did not stand up. I stayed in the chair, clutching a ceramic mug of hot tea with both hands, letting the steam warm my face. Dad, Nia said softly. Her voice was tight. I looked up at them, blinking slowly behind my thick glasses. Hello, Nia. Blake. I did not expect visitors this late. Is everything all right? Blake did not answer. He did not apologize for the scene in the lobby. He did not apologize for throwing my wife jambalaya in the trash. He did not apologize for having security drag me out into the rain. To him, that moment had already been erased. It was irrelevant. He had a mission, and I was the objective. He walked to the small dining table in the corner of the room and swept my stack of newspapers onto the floor. Then he slammed a thick leather folder down on the wood. The sound made the china in the cabinet rattle. We are not here for a social call, Reggie Blake said. We are here to save you. Save me, I asked, my voice quavering just the right amount. From what? From yourself, Blake said. He paced around the small room looking at my old books and the knickknacks on the shelves with undisguised disgust. Look at this place. It is a fire hazard. It is falling apart, and you are not getting any younger. Nia and I are worried about you. I looked at Nia. She was studying the floor pattern intently, refusing to meet my gaze. Is that true, Nia? I asked. Are you worried? She nodded jerkily. Yes, Dad. We think you are struggling. Blake unzipped the leather folder. He pulled out a stack of documents stapled together with a blue cover. He tossed them onto the coffee table in front of me. This is the solution, Blake said. It is a power of attorney and a deed transfer. I looked at the papers. The legal jargon was dense, but I had read contracts worth millions of dollars for breakfast. I knew exactly what I was looking at. It was a full transfer of assets. It authorized Blake Sterling to manage all my property and financial accounts. It also included a specific clause for the immediate sale of this property. You want to sell my house, I said softly. We want to leverage it, Blake corrected. He sat on the edge of the sofa, leaning in close. His cologne was overpowering. Listen, Reggie, this house is dead equity. It is sitting here doing nothing. I can take the value of this property and invest it in my firm's exclusive high-yield fund. We are talking 15% returns annually. It will pay for a nice assisted living facility for you, somewhere with nurses, somewhere clean. I stared at him. He was lying. I could see the sweat beading on his upper lip. I could see the slight tick in his left eye. He did not want to invest the money. He needed it. He needed liquid cash to cover the hole he had dug for himself. I remember 5 years ago, Blake, I said slowly, letting my memory drift back. You sat in this exact room. You asked me for $50,000 for the wedding. You said it was a short-term loan. You said your bonus was coming in 2 weeks. Blake stiffened. That is ancient history. I never saw that money again. I continued, my voice raspy. I gave you my savings, and now you want my house. That was an investment in your daughter's happiness. Blake snapped, his face flushing red. And this is an investment in your survival. Do you have any idea how much care homes cost? Do you? We are trying to help you, old man. I reached out a shaking hand and touched the paper. I do not want to move, I said. This is my home. Beatrice and I lived here. Her garden is out back. Beatrice is dead, Blake said brutally, and the garden is a weed patch. Stop living in the past. Sign the papers. I looked at Nia again. Daughter, please, do not let him take my home. Nia finally looked at me. Her eyes were hard, cold stones. Dad, please just sign it. Blake knows what is best with money. You are confused. You are getting old. It is embarrassing to see you live like this. Embarrassing. The word hung in the air. I am not confused, Nia, I said, dropping the act for a microsecond before pulling it back up. I am just tired. Sign the damn papers, Blake shouted. He stood up and loomed over me. His shadow fell across my face. He was trying to intimidate me physically. He thought I was a frail, 71-year-old man who would crumble under pressure. I cannot, I whispered. I need to read them first. I need to show them to a lawyer. We do not have time for lawyers, Blake roared. The market moves fast. This opportunity expires tomorrow morning. If you do not sign this tonight, the deal is gone. And if the deal is gone... He stopped. He took a breath. He leaned down until his face was inches from mine. If you do not sign this, Reggie, I am cutting you off. I blinked. What do you mean? I mean Nia will never step foot in this house again, Blake hissed. You will never see us. You will never see your future grandchildren. You will die in this rotting box alone. No one will find you for weeks. You will just be a smell that the neighbors complain about. Is that what you want? The cruelty was breathtaking. It was a raw, naked threat. He was holding my relationship with my only child hostage for the price of a rundown cottage. I looked at Nia, expecting her to protest, expecting her to tell him he had gone too far. But she said nothing. She just stood there, biting her lip, letting him wield the knife. My heart went cold. The last ember of hope I had for them was extinguished. They were not just greedy, they were evil. Okay, I said, my hand trembling violently. Okay, if it means I can still see Nia, good, Blake said, straightening up. He pulled a gold fountain pen from his pocket and uncapped it. Sign at the bottom of page 4. I took the pen. My hand shook so hard I could barely hold it. I brought the tip of the pen down to the paper. Blake was watching me like a hawk watching a mouse. He was practically vibrating with greed. He was already spending the money in his head. I pretended to have a spasm. My arm jerked. "Oops," I said. My other hand, holding the mug of scaling hot tea, flew outward. The brown liquid splashed across the table, soaking the documents instantly. The ink on the pages began to run. The paper turned into a soggy brown mush. Blake screamed. It was a high-pitched sound of pure rage. He jumped back, trying to save his suit from the splash, but it was too late. Hot tea splattered onto his expensive Italian trousers. "You stupid old fool," Blake yelled. "Look what you did. I am sorry," I stammered, dropping the mug. It shattered on the floor. My hand, it just slipped. "You did that on purpose." Blake accused, his face purple with veins bulging in his neck. He lunged at me. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me, my muscles tensed, ready to deflect the blow and break his wrist. But he stopped himself. Instead, he grabbed the nearest thing to him. It was a blue ceramic vase on the mantelpiece. It was simple, delicate, and hand-painted with white lilies. Beatrice had bought it on our honeymoon in Provence 40 years ago. It was one of the few things in this house that had real sentimental value. "No," I said, my voice dropping the tremor. "Don't." Blake did not listen. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to break something because he could not break me yet. He lifted the vase high above his head and smashed it onto the hardwood floor. The sound of the ceramic shattering was louder than the storm outside. Shards of blue and white pottery exploded across the room, scattering under the sofa and chairs. "That is what you get." Blake spat, breathing heavily. "That is what you get for being a clumsy, useless waste of space." Nia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Blake, that was Mom's." "I do not care," Blake shouted, turning on her. "He ruined the contract. Now I have to get a new one drawn up. Do you know how much a rush fee is at this hour?" He turned back to me, pointing a shaking finger. "I am coming back tomorrow morning, Reggie, at 8 a.m. I will have new papers, and you will sign them. If you spill so much as a drop of water, I will put you in a state-run facility so fast your head will spin. I will have you declared incompetent before lunch. Do you understand me?" I looked at the shattered remains of Beatrice's vase. I looked at the dark stain of tea soaking into the rug, and then I looked up at Blake. I said nothing. I just stared at him. "Come on," Nia Blake barked, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the door. "We are leaving. This place stinks of old age." Nia looked back at me one last time. There were tears in her eyes now, real tears, but she did not stop. She let him drag her out into the night. The door slammed shut. The house shook. I listened to the BMW engine roar to life and fade into the distance. Silence returned to the cottage. I stood up. I did not use the armrests for support. I stood up straight, my back unbending, my shoulders squaring. The tremor in my hands vanished completely. I walked over to the mess on the floor. I knelt down and picked up a large piece of the blue ceramic. The painted lily was cracked down the middle. I held it in my palm, feeling the sharp edge against my skin. "You made a mistake, Blake," I whispered to the empty room. "You broke the only thing protecting you." I walked to the kitchen and picked up the secure satellite phone. I dialed Sarah's number again. "It is done," I said. "Did he sign?" Sarah asked. "No," I said. "He threatened me. He threatened to isolate me from Nia. And he smashed Beatrice's vase." There was a silence on the line. Sarah knew what that vase meant. "I am sorry, Reggie," she said softly. "Do not be," I said, my voice cold and hard like steel. "It is clarity. Absolute clarity. Proceed with the acquisition, Sarah. Buy his debt. Buy his building." And Sarah. "Yes. Get the private jet ready. I have a meeting to attend tomorrow morning, but first send a cleaning crew to my cottage." Cleaning crew. "Yes, I need them to sweep up some trash." "And Sarah, make sure the security team is on standby." "For what?" "For the hunt," I said. I hung up the phone and looked at my reflection in the dark window. The frail old man was gone. The predator was back, and he was very, very hungry. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind Blake, leaving a silence in the kitchen that felt thicker than smoke. Through the window, I could see the glow of his cigarette bobbing in the dark like an angry firefly. He was pacing on the gravel driveway, trying to burn off the adrenaline of violence. Inside the house, the air still smelled of the hot tea I had spilled and the ozone scent of shattered trust. My daughter Nia stood by the counter. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving beneath her expensive silk blouse. She did not look at me. She stared down at the fragments of blue ceramic scattered across the floorboards. The vase her mother had loved so much was now just jagged trash. I watched her hands. They were clenched into fists at her sides. She was not trembling with fear. She was trembling with frustration. I took a step toward her, leaning heavily on my cane, not because I needed to, but because I needed her to see the frailty she despised. I needed her to underestimate me for just 5 more minutes. "Nia," I said softly. She flinched, but did not turn around. "He broke your mother vase," I said, my voice cracking with genuine grief. "That was the last thing she bought in France." Nia spun around. Her face was flushed and her eyes were wet, but there was no softness in them. There was only a hard, cold glint that reminded me of a stranger. "Stop it, Dad," she snapped. "Just stop it. You provoked him. You always provoke him." I blinked, feeling a physical blow to my chest. "I provoked him," I asked. "He came into my home. He threatened me. He destroyed my property." "Because you are being stubborn," she shouted, throwing her hands up. "You are being difficult on purpose. You know how much stress Blake is under. The market is volatile. His firm is pressuring him. He tries to help you. He tries to secure your future, and you act like a petulant child spilling tea and dragging your feet." I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the lines of worry etched around her mouth. I saw the desperation in her stance. But beneath that, I saw something else. I saw shame. "Is this about his stress, Nia?" I asked quietly, moving closer. "Or is this about you? Do you know what he is doing? He is not investing money. He is gambling. I have seen the way he looks at numbers. He is desperate." Nia laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound that had no joy in it. "You do not know anything about his world." "Dad," she spat. "You drove trucks. You managed a warehouse. Blake deals with millions of dollars before breakfast. He understands finance in a way you never could. You think because you saved a few pennies in a jar, you understand wealth. You understand nothing." I felt a coldness spread through my veins. It started in my fingertips and moved to my heart, freezing the love I had held for her since the day she was born. She did not know I had sold my company for 9 figures. She did not know I spoke 3 languages and read market reports for fun. To her, I was just Reggie, the uneducated laborer. "Is that what you think of me?" I asked. "That I am just a stupid old man?" "No, Dad," she said, her voice dropping to a hiss that was somehow more hurtful than the shouting. "I think you are an anchor." The word hung in the air between us. "Anchor. You are a heavy, rusted anchor dragging me down to the bottom," she continued, stepping into my personal space. "Do you have any idea what it is like for me? I walk into those galas with Blake. I attend dinners with partners who went to Yale and Princeton. Their parents are senators. They are CEOs. They are legacy. And then there is me, who is my father Reggie, the man who wears suits from the thrift store, the man who tells embarrassing stories about the army, the man who lives in a shack." She gestured wildly around my modest living room. "I have spent my entire adult life trying to scrub the smell of this place off of me," she said, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "I want to belong, Dad. I want to be one of them. Blake gives me that chance. He gives me a life of class, a life where I matter. But every time you show up with your lunchboxes and your cane, you remind everyone that I am just a fraud, that I come from nothing, that I am just the daughter of a nobody." I stood there frozen. The pain was absolute. It was a white, hot agony that seared through my soul. I had hidden my wealth to protect her character. I wanted her to value hard work. I wanted her to be humble. Instead, I had fueled a deep-seated insecurity that had turned her into a monster. She did not hate me because I was bad to her. She hated me because she was ashamed of where she came from. "So I am a burden," I whispered. "Yes," she said, wiping her eyes aggressively. "You are a burden. You are a stone around my neck. If you really loved me, you would sign those papers. You would sell this dump and move into a home where people are paid to deal with you. You would give us the money so we can live the life we deserve. That is what a good father would do. He would get out of the way." I looked at her purse sitting open on the kitchen table. It was a Louis Vuitton bag. I had paid for it 3 years ago through a secret cash gift I had funneled through her aunt. She thought she had bought it with her bonus. She did not know I was the architect of every nice thing in her life. "I need a glass of water," I said, my voice sounding hoarse and defeated. Nia rolled her eyes, letting out a heavy sigh of annoyance. "Fine. Just hurry up. Blake is waiting." She turned to the sink to fill a glass. The water ran loudly. In that second, I moved. I did not shake. I did not hesitate. My hand moved with the precision of a surgeon and the speed of a soldier. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the micro-listening device. It was a small black disc, smaller than a button. I dropped it into the side pocket of her open purse, tucking it deep into the lining where her keys would not scratch it. It slid in silently. Nia turned back around and thrust the glass of water at me. I took it with a trembling hand, ensuring the performance continued until the curtain fell. I took a sip. The water tasted like ash. I looked at my daughter. The little girl who used to sit on my lap and ask me to read her stories was dead. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger who wanted to cannibalize me to feed her own vanity. The front door opened. Blake walked back in. He brought the smell of cold air and stale tobacco with him. He looked at Nia, then at me. "Did he sign?" Blake asked, his eyes narrowing. "No," Nia said, grabbing her purse and swinging it over her shoulder. The bug was secure. She did not feel a thing. "He is not going to sign tonight. He is too busy feeling sorry for himself." Blake sneered. He walked over to me and pointed a finger in my face. "You are making a huge mistake, old man. You think you can stall us. You think you can win." I stared at his finger. I imagined breaking it. But I did nothing. I just breathed. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "We are going." Blake laughed. "But we will be back tomorrow. And we are bringing a lawyer, a real shark. We are going to have you declared incompetent, Reggie. We will tell the judge you are senile, that you are a danger to yourself. Look at this mess on the floor. Broken glass, spilled tea. It looks like the home of a man who cannot take care of himself, doesn't it?" He kicked a piece of the blue vase across the floor. It skittered under the refrigerator. Nia did not flinch. She just watched. "Come on, babe," Blake said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Let's go. I cannot stand the smell of poverty anymore." Nia looked at me one last time. There was no apology in her eyes, only impatience. "Goodbye, Dad," she said. "Do the right thing tomorrow, or we will do it for you." They walked out. The door slammed shut. The house shook one last time. I stood in the kitchen alone. My heart was not beating fast anymore. The pain was still there, but it had hardened. It had crystallized into a cold resolve. I walked over to the sink and poured the water down the drain. I did not need water. I needed clarity, and they had given it to me. I pulled out my secure phone and put in my earpiece. I activated the receiver. The audio feed crackled to life. I could hear the muffled sounds of them getting into the car. I heard the engine start. "I can't believe he didn't sign," Nia's voice came through clear and sharp. "He is so selfish." "Don't worry, babe," Blake's voice replied. "I already called the notary. We will get the papers forged if we have to. Once he is in the nursing home, he won't be able to do anything. We will sell the land by Friday." I listened. I recorded. They thought they had left a helpless old man behind in the cottage. They did not know they had just armed a bomb, and the countdown had already begun. The blue coveralls smelled of industrial detergent and invisibility. It is remarkable how a simple change of clothes can erase a man from existence. Yesterday I was the embarrassed father-in-law in an outdated suit being dragged out by security. Today I was just a shadow in a work uniform pushing a gray cart filled with cleaning supplies and fiber optic cables. I pulled the cap low over my eyes, covering my gray hair, and walked through the same revolving doors that had spit me out into the rain less than 24 hours ago. The lobby was bustling with the morning rush. Young analysts in slim suits sprinted toward the elevators, clutching coffees like lifelines. Security guards scanned badges with bored efficiency. I walked straight toward the service elevator. I did not look at the reception desk. I did not look at the spot on the floor where my wife Jambalaya had been thrown away. I moved with the heavy, plodding gait of a man whose knees hurt from years of labor. It was a walk I knew well because I had walked it for real in the 70s. But today, it was performance art. I reached the service bay. A keypad glowed red on the wall. A young guard stepped in front of me, ID. He grunted, not even looking at my face. I reached into the pocket of the coveralls and pulled out a white plastic card. It had no photo. It had no name. It just had a magnetic strip and a small gold chip embedded in the corner. Maintenance. I grumbled, shifting my weight. HVAC's on 24. System is acting up. The guard waved his hand scanner over the card. He expected it to beep and show a contractor name. Instead, the scanner let out a melodic chime that I had not heard in 15 years. The light on the elevator turned green instantly. The doors slid open with a deferential hush. The guard frowned, looking at his scanner. It had displayed a code he probably did not recognize. Alpha priority. "You are good to go," the guard said, sounding confused but unwilling to question the machine. I nodded and pushed my cart inside. As the doors closed, I allowed myself a small, cold smile. I knew the code worked because I wrote the code. 15 years ago, my logistics company had expanded into corporate security. We won the contract for this building when it was just a blueprint. I designed the access protocols. I kept a master admin key for myself buried deep in the system architecture just in case I ever needed to inspect my investment. They had updated the paint and the furniture in this building, but they had never scrubbed the digital foundation. The elevator rose swiftly. My stomach dropped, but my pulse remained steady. I was entering enemy territory. The 24th floor was silent. The air conditioning hummed a white noise that masked the sound of millions of dollars moving through fiber optic cables. I stepped out, pushing my cart. The floor was open plan, a sea of desks and monitors. Blake's office was in the corner, a glass-walled aquarium that offered a panoramic view of the city he thought he owned. I checked my watch. 9:15. Blake was in the weekly partners meeting on the 30th floor. I had 45 minutes. I rolled the cart down the hallway. Heads did not turn. Eyes slid right over me. To these people, I was part of the furniture. I was less than human. I was the help. I reached Blake's office door. It was locked. I swiped my card. The lock disengaged with a soft click. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me, locking it again. The office smelled of stale espresso and desperation. On the surface, it looked pristine. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, awards on the wall. But I knew how to look deeper. I saw the stacks of unopened mail on the sidebar. Final notices. I saw the half-empty bottle of scotch hidden behind a framed photo of my daughter. I moved to the desk. I did not touch the computer. Blake would have passwords, and I did not have the time to crack them. I went for the trash. Under the desk was a shredder. The bin was full. A pile of white confetti. "Amateur," I whispered. "A smart man burns his secrets. An arrogant man shreds them and thinks they are gone." I pulled the bin out and dumped the contents into a black trash bag I had brought in my cart. Then I looked at the desk surface. There was a notepad. He had written numbers on it and scratched them out so hard the pen had torn the paper. I took a picture with my secure phone. Then I opened the bottom drawer. It was locked, but a paper clip and 10 seconds of pressure popped the mechanism. Inside, I found what I was looking for. It was a file labeled Harrison Account. I opened it. My eyes scanned the documents. Unauthorized transfers. Signatures that looked shaky like mine but were clearly forged. He was moving client money into a personal holding account. He was Ponzi scheming his own clients to pay off his gambling debts. And there it was. A letter from a man named Vinny the Butcher Moretti. It was not a polite letter. It was a demand for $500,000 by Friday or else. So that was the timeline. Friday. He needed to liquidate my house and put me in a home by Friday or the sharks would come for his legs. I took photos of everything. My hands moved fast. Click. Turn. Click. Turn. Suddenly I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. The elevator dinged down the hall. Voices. Loud voices. One of them was Blake. He was back early. The meeting must have ended early or he had been kicked out. I shoved the file back into the drawer and kicked it shut. I grabbed the trash bag and threw it into my cart, covering it with dirty rags. The voices were getting closer. "Come on, baby, I just need 5 minutes." It was Blake's voice. And a woman voice. A giggling, high-pitched sound that definitely did not belong to my daughter. I looked around. There was no way out. The glass walls had blinds, but they were open. If I walked out now, I would run right into them. I saw a door in the corner of the room. It was narrow, almost flush with the wall. The server closet. I grabbed my cart and shoved it into the corner, hoping it looked like I had just stepped out for a moment. Then I squeezed myself into the closet and pulled the door shut, just as the main office door opened. The closet was tiny. It was filled with servers blinking green and blue lights. The heat was intense. Fans whirred loudly around me. I had to suck in my stomach to fit between the racks of equipment. A bundle of cables dug into my spine. I stood in the dark, breathing through my nose, listening. I heard the lock on the office door click shut. "So this is where the magic happens," the woman voice said. It was husky now, playful. "This is where I make the money," Jessica Blake said. His voice was different than when he spoke to Naya. It was not whiny or manipulative. It was boastful. I heard the sound of glass clinking. He was pouring drinks. At 9:30 in the morning, I peered through the slats of the ventilation grill at the bottom of the door. I could see their feet. Blake, shiny Italian loafers, and a pair of red high heels. Jessica, the secretary, the blonde woman who sat at the front desk and smiled at Nia whenever she came to visit. "You seem stressed," baby Jessica said. "I am stressed," Blake replied. I gulped the drink. I can hear the ice rattle. The old man is being difficult. He refused to sign the papers last night. He made a mess, spilled tea everywhere like an invalid. Jessica laughed. A cruel sound. Ugh, old people are so gross. Why don't you just put him in a home already? "That is the plan," Blake said. "I am meeting with a lawyer this afternoon. We are going to file for emergency guardianship. I will tell the judge he is a danger to himself. Once I have the signature, the house is mine. I can liquidate it, pay off the loan, and we are free." "And what about Nia?" Jessica asked. She sounded jealous. "Is she going to be a problem?" Blake laughed. It was a dark, ugly sound. "Nia is a useful idiot. She is so desperate to be high society she will do whatever I say. She thinks we are investing the money for her dad care. She has no idea I'm going to use it to save my skin." I gripped a metal rack in the dark. The metal bit into my palm. I wanted to burst out of that closet and strangle him. I wanted to end him right there, but I held back. I needed to hear the rest. "So, are you going to stay with her?" Jessica asked. "After you get the money." Blake paused. I saw his shoes turn toward the window. "Hell no," he said. "Once the money is secure and the debt is paid, I am done. I will divorce her so fast her head will spin. I only married her because I thought her old man was sitting on a pile of land in the South. Turns out he is just a broke truck driver. She is nothing to me, Jessica. She is just a ticket. A ticket I am about to punch." The air in the closet felt like it was running out. My chest tightened. Nia was a ticket, a pawn. He did not love her. He despised her. He was using her insecurity against her, manipulating her shame to rob her own father, and then he planned to discard her like a used wrapper. "Oh, Blake, you are so bad," Jessica giggled. "Yeah, well, nice guys finish last," Blake said. "Come here." I heard the rustle of clothes, the sounds of wet kisses. I closed my eyes in the dark. The rage was a physical thing now, a living creature inside my chest, clawing to get out. They carried on for 10 minutes. 10 minutes of listening to my son-in-law betray my daughter in the office where he was stealing her inheritance. Finally, they stopped. "I better get back to my desk," Jessica said, breathless. "People will talk." "Let them talk," Blake said. "Soon I will own this town." The door opened and closed. Jessica left. Blake paced the room for a moment longer. I heard him make a phone call. "Yeah, it is me. Tell Vinny I will have the money." "Yeah, Friday. The old man is cracking. I will have the house sold by the end of the week. Just tell him to back off." He hung up. Then he grabbed his coat and left the office. I waited 5 full minutes. I counted every second, my heart beating a slow rhythm of war drums. Then I pushed the closet door open and stepped out. I was sweating. My coveralls were stuck to my back. I smelled like ozone and hate. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. "You think you are going to own this town, Blake?" I whispered to the glass. I retrieved my cart. I pulled the trash bag full of shredded documents out and tied it tight. I walked out of the office. I walked past the receptionist's desk where Jessica was applying lipstick, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. She did not look up. She did not see the janitor. I took the service elevator down. I walked past the guard. I walked out the back door to the loading dock where Marcus was waiting with the Rolls-Royce. "Pop the trunk, Marcus," I said, tossing the bag of shredded paper inside. "Where to, Mr. Carter?" To the lawyer, I said, climbing into the back seat. And then to the bank. I looked at the building one last time as we drove away. "He wants a divorce," I said to the empty car. "I will give him a divorce. But first, I am going to give him a funeral." Nia was a fool. She was weak. She was vain. But she was my daughter. And no one used my blood as a ticket. Blake Sterling had just signed his own death warrant. And he did not even know the executioner was already in the building. The heavy steel door of the wine cellar clicked shut, sealing out the world and locking in the silence. The air down here was cool and smelled of damp earth and old French oak. It was a scent that usually brought me peace, but tonight it smelled like the calm before a mortar strike. I walked past rows of dusty bottles that were worth more than the car my son-in-law drove. I stopped at a rack holding a 1982 Bordeaux. I pulled the cork not because I wanted to drink, but because I needed to do something with my hands other than strangle Blake Sterling. My lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, was sitting at the heavy walnut tasting table. She had spread out a series of documents under the warm glow of the hanging Edison bulb. Sarah was the only person in the world who knew the full extent of my empire. She was 45, sharp as a razor, and loyal to the bone. She had been with me since the logistics company days when we were fighting off union busters and hostile takeovers. She did not look at the wine. She looked at me, and her face was pale. "You need to see this, Reggie," she said. Her voice echoed slightly off the stone walls. I poured 2 glasses of the dark red liquid and slid one across the wood to her. Then I sat down. The chair creaked under my weight. I was still wearing the cheap janitor coveralls, but I had unzipped the front to let the heat escape. It was a strange image. A man dressed like a servant drinking wine fit for a king in a bunker made of money. "What did you find, Sarah?" I asked, taking a sip. The wine was complex, but it tasted bitter on my tongue tonight. Sarah pushed a stack of papers toward me. "It is worse than we thought. Blake is not just a bad investor. He is a dead man walking." I picked up the first sheet. It was a credit report, but not a standard one. This was a black market dossier, the kind you buy from people who know where the bodies are buried. "He lost it all," Reggie Sarah explained, pointing to a column of red numbers. "He leveraged his clients' portfolios to buy cryptocurrency options. He bet the house, he bet the firm, and he lost. He is down $4 million in client funds." I nodded slowly. I had seen the shredded documents in his office. I knew he was stealing, but $4 million was a hole you could not climb out of. "That is why he needs my house," I said, "to plug the leak." "It is not just the leak," Sarah said. She pulled out another photo. It was a grainy surveillance shot of Blake shaking hands with a large man in a cheap suit outside a strip club. "Do you know who that is?" Sarah asked. I squinted at the photo. I did not know the face, but I knew the type. Thick neck, dead eyes, a bulge under the jacket that was definitely not a wallet. "That is Vincent Moretti," I said. "They call him the Butcher." Sarah nodded. "Blake went to him 6 months ago when the market first dipped. He borrowed $500,000 to cover a margin call. He thought he could win it back before the interest kicked in. He was wrong. The Butcher wants his money, Reggie, and he wants it by Friday." I leaned back in my chair. Friday. The same deadline Blake had given me. It all fit together like the gears of a clock, the desperation, the aggression, the threats. He was not just trying to upgrade his lifestyle, he was trying to keep his kneecaps. "If he does not pay," Sarah said quietly, "Moretti will kill him." That is not a figure of speech. They found Moretti's last client in a marsh in Jersey, or parts of him anyway. I took another sip of wine. I felt a cold detachment settle over me. My son-in-law was a fool, a dangerous, arrogant fool. He had dragged my daughter into the orbit of violent men. "Buy it," I said. Sarah blinked. "What?" "Buy the debt," I said, my voice flat. "Contact Moretti through our intermediaries. Offer him $600,000 cash. Today. Tell him we are buying the note. I want to be the one holding the leash." Reggie, Sarah warned. "You do not do business with men like Moretti. You stay away from them." "I am not doing business with him," I said. "I am removing him from the equation. I want Blake to answer to me, not to a gangster. I want to own his debt. I want to own his panic. I want to own his life." Sarah sighed and made a note on her legal pad. She knew better than to argue when I used that tone. "Fine. I will initiate the transfer through the shell company. By tomorrow morning, you will be Blake Sterling's sole creditor." "Good," I said. "Now what about the building?" "We initiated the foreclosure," Sarah said. "The bank was happy to sell the commercial paper. As of 3 p.m. today, your holding company owns the mortgage on Sterling Capital Tower. You can evict them whenever you want." I smiled. It was a small, cruel smile. "Not yet. I want to do it when the audience is watching." Sarah did not smile back. She looked down at the last document on the table. She had not pushed this one toward me yet. Her hand was resting on it as if she wanted to protect me from what was written there. "What is that, Sarah?" I asked. She hesitated. Reggie, this is the hard part. Give it to me. She slid the paper across the table. It was a policy document from a major insurance provider. I put on my reading glasses. I scanned the lines. It was a life insurance policy. Term life. $2 million. The insured was me. Reginald Carter. The beneficiary was Nia Carter Sterling. I looked at the date. It was signed 3 days ago. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was my name written in a shaky hand that tried to mimic my own but missed the distinct loop I always put on the R. It is a forgery, I said quietly. Yes, Sarah said, but it is a good one. And look at the clauses, Reggie. Look at page 7. I turned the page. Sarah had highlighted a paragraph in yellow. Double indemnity clause, she read aloud. The payout doubles to $4 million if the death is accidental. I took off my glasses and placed them on the table. The silence in the cellar became oppressive. The air felt heavy. He is not just waiting for me to die, I said. He is planning to help me along. Sarah nodded, her eyes full of fear. We intercepted a text message from his burner phone. He contacted a man named Miller. Miller is a mechanic. He specializes in brake lines that fail on winding roads. I closed my eyes. I saw my daughter face. I saw the way she looked at Blake with adoration and fear. Did she know? Did she know her husband was planning to murder her father for $4 million? Or was she just a pawn, a useful idiot, as Blake had called her? He is going to kill you, Reggie, Sarah said, her voice urgent. You cannot go back to that cottage. It is not safe. We need to go to the police. We have the forgery. We have the intent. No, I said, opening my eyes. If we go to the police, he will lawyer up. He will claim it was a mistake. He will claim he was just being prudent. And even if he goes to jail, it will be for fraud. He will be out in 5 years. I stood up and walked to the wine rack. I ran my hand along the cool glass bottles. I want him destroyed, Sarah. I want him to lose everything. His reputation, his money, his freedom. And I want Nia to see it. I want her to see the monster she married. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the secure line. I pulled it out. It was a text message from Blake. I stared at the screen. The blue light illuminated the darkness of the cellar. Reggie, the message read, I am sorry about last night. I lost my temper. Nia and I want to make it right. The firm is hosting a charity gala tonight at the Penthouse. We want you to come. We want to honor you. Please come. Let us start over. I showed the screen to Sarah. It is a trap, she said immediately. He is going to get you there and try to force you to sign the papers again. Or worse, he might try to stage an accident there. A fall down the stairs. A heart attack. Honor me, I scoffed. He wants to parade me around. He probably wants to use me as a prop to get sympathy donations. Or maybe he just wants to get me drunk and confused before the notary arrives. Do not go, Reggie, Sarah pleaded. I have to go, I said. Why? Because that is where the stage is set, I said. He invited me into the lion den. Sarah, he thinks I am the gazelle. He does not know I am the hunter. I picked up the forged insurance policy and folded it neatly, putting it into my pocket. Buy the debt, Sarah. Execute the purchase of the building and get the security team ready. I want them in the perimeter, invisible but close. And what are you going to do? Sarah asked, standing up as she packed her files. I am going to get dressed, I said. I walked toward the heavy steel door. I paused with my hand on the latch. He wants an accident, I said, my voice low. I will give him a collision, but he is going to be the one who crashes. I opened the door and walked out of the cellar, leaving the safety of the bunker behind. I climbed the stairs to the main house, which stood empty and grand, waiting for its master to return. But I did not stop there. I went to the master suite. I opened the walk-in closet. It was filled with suits that had not seen the light of day in years. Brioni, Tom Ford, Savile Row. I pushed aside the hangers until I found what I was looking for. It was a tuxedo, midnight blue, custom made in London. It had a silk lining that was bullet resistant, a relic from a time when my business competitors played rough. I touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth. Tonight, Reginald, the truck driver, dies, I whispered to the empty room. Tonight, the chairman returns. I began to dress. Shirt, studs, cummerbund. I tied the bow tie with muscle memory that never faded. I looked in the mirror. The old man with the stooped shoulders was gone. In his place stood a man of power, a man of war. I put the old tattered trench coat over the tuxedo, buttoning it all the way to the chin to hide the armor beneath. I put on the old flat cap. I was a wolf in sheep clothing. I walked out to the Rolls-Royce where Marcus was waiting. "To the gala, Marcus," I said. He nodded and opened the door. As the car glided through the night toward the city lights, I checked my phone one last time. I typed a reply to Blake. "I will be there, son. Thank you." I hit send. The trap was set. But Blake Sterling had no idea that he had just invited the executioner to his own party. The mirror in my master suite was older than my son-in-law and had seen things he could only imagine in his nightmares. It reflected a man who was 71 years old on paper but timeless in his resolve. I stood before it, stripping away the disguise of Reggie the helpless grandfather. The beige cardigan fell to the floor in a heap of wool and deception. The corduroy trousers followed. I was left in my undershirt, my skin mapped with scars that told the history of my life. There was the jagged line on my ribs from a knife fight in Da Nang. The burn mark on my shoulder from a warehouse fire in '92. Each scar was a lesson. Each lesson was a weapon. I opened the safe hidden behind the oil painting of the coastline. The tumblers clicked with a satisfying weight. Inside rested the tools of my trade. Not stocks or bonds, but survival. I pulled out the suit bag that had been hanging in the dark for a decade. I unzipped it slowly. The tuxedo was midnight blue, cut from a fabric that cost $300 a yard. It was bespoke, made by a tailor in London who served royalty and spies. But the true value was not in the silk lapels, it was in the lining. A thin, flexible layer of ballistic weave was stitched invisibly into the chest and back. It could stop a small caliber round or a knife thrust. It was armor for a battlefield where the bullets were made of greed and the knives were held by family. I put on the shirt. The starched white cotton felt like armor against my skin. I fastened the studs, my fingers moving with a dexterity that defied my age. I tied the bow tie, watching my own eyes in the glass. They were hard eyes. The eyes of a man who had walked through fire and come out carrying the torch. As I adjusted the cummerbund, my mind drifted back to 1968. The jungle was hot and wet, smelling of rot and fear. We were pinned down in a rice paddy, the water up to our waists. The enemy was invisible, just flashes of light in the tree line. My sergeant, a man named Miller, had panicked. He froze. I had to take command. I had to become something else, something cold and efficient. I learned then that survival is not about strength. It is about perception. You make the enemy see what you want them to see. You make them see a harmless shadow until the shadow cuts their throat. Tonight I was doing the same thing. Blake saw a harmless old man. He saw a victim. He did not see the predator in the tuxedo. I slipped into the jacket. It fit perfectly, hugging my shoulders without restricting my movement. I checked the hidden pockets. In the left one I placed the recording device. In the right one I slid a small weighted baton made of dense polymer. It looked like a pen, but it could break a bone with a flick of the wrist. Finally I reached for the finishing touch. The disguise. I pulled the tattered, oversized trench coat from the back of the closet. It was stained with oil and smelled faintly of mothballs. It was the coat of a man who had given up. I buttoned it all the way to my chin, hiding the elegance of the tuxedo completely. I put on the old flat cap, pulling it low over my eyes. I grabbed my cane, the one with the scratched handle. I looked in the mirror again. The chairman was gone. Reggie the vagrant had returned. "Perfect," I whispered. I walked out of the house and into the night. The air was crisp. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. Marcus was waiting by the Rolls-Royce, the engine purring silently. "Not yet." "Marcus," I said, raising a hand. "I need to walk a bit. Clear my head. Meet me on the corner of 5th and Main in 10 minutes. Marcus frowned but nodded. He knew better than to question my process. "Be careful, Mr. Carter. The city is restless tonight." "I am the one who is restless, Marcus," I said. I started walking down the sidewalk, my cane tapping a steady rhythm. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows. I was 3 blocks from my real home in a neighborhood that was quiet and wealthy. But even here, danger lurked. I reached the crosswalk. The light was red. I waited. A car was idling at the corner, a dark sedan with tinted windows. The engine was revving slightly, a low growl that seemed out of place. The light turned green. The walk signal chirped. I stepped off the curb. The sedan engine roared. It happened in a split second. The car did not turn. It surged forward, tires screeching, aiming directly for me. The headlights blinded me, two bright eyes of a mechanical beast charging for the kill. Most men my age would have frozen. They would have stared at the lights and waited for the impact. But I was not most men. My body reacted before my mind did. The muscle memory of the jungle took over. I did not jump back. I threw myself forward and to the side, rolling across the hood of a parked car. The sedan missed me by inches. The side mirror clipped my cane, sending it spinning into the gutter. The wind of the passing car ruffled my coat. I hit the pavement hard, my shoulder taking the impact. Pain shot through my arm, but I ignored it. I scrambled to my feet instantly, my hand going to the baton in my pocket. The sedan did not stop. It screeched around the corner, its tires smoking, and disappeared into the night. I stood there breathing heavily, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked down the empty street. It was not an accident. The driver had waited. He had timed it. Blake, I hissed. He was not waiting for Friday. He was trying to cash in the insurance policy tonight. He wanted to make sure I never made it to the gala. Or maybe this was just a warning. A nudge toward the grave. I walked over to the gutter and picked up my cane. It was cracked, but still functional. I gripped it tightly. "You missed," I said to the empty air, "and you do not get a second shot." I dusted off my coat. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold fury. He had tried to kill me. My own son-in-law had tried to run me down like a dog in the street. This was no longer just about money or respect. This was war. And in war, there are no rules. I walked the rest of the way to the rendezvous point, keeping to the shadows, checking every car that passed. I was not afraid. I was focused. Every sense was heightened. The smell of exhaust, the sound of distant sirens, the feel of the pavement under my shoes. Marcus was waiting at the corner, the Rolls-Royce, idling like a loyal beast. He saw me approach and jumped out, his eyes widening when he saw the scuff marks on my coat. "Mr. Carter," he said, rushing over. "Are you all right?" "What happened?" "Just a little traffic dispute, Marcus," I said, brushing past him. "Nothing to worry about." I climbed into the back seat. The safety of the armored car wrapped around me. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of leather calm my nerves. "Where to, sir?" Marcus asked, getting behind the wheel. "The gala," I said. "But do not pull up to the front door. Drop me 2 blocks away." 2 blocks, Marcus asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "But sir, it is a black tie event. You will have to walk." "Exactly," I said. "I want to walk. I want them to see me walking. I want them to see the old man trudging toward his humiliation." I checked my pocket, ensuring the baton was still there. I checked the other pocket for the recorder. Everything was in place. I sat back as the car moved through the city. I watched the buildings pass by, towers of glass and steel reaching for the sky. Somewhere in one of those towers, Blake was waiting. He was probably holding a glass of champagne, smiling at his guests, thinking his problem had been solved, thinking the old man was lying in a hospital bed or a morgue. He was going to be very surprised when I walked through that door. The car slowed. We were 2 blocks from the penthouse. "Here, Marcus," I said. The car stopped. I opened the door and stepped out. The city noise washed over me. I adjusted my cap, pulled my coat tight, and leaned on my cane. "Wait for my signal, Marcus," I said. "When I call, bring the car around, and bring the team." "Yes, sir." I watched the Rolls-Royce drive away, disappearing into traffic. I was alone again. Just an old man on a street corner. I turned toward the gleaming tower where the gala was being held. I could see the lights from the penthouse spilling out into the night. I could almost hear the music and the laughter of the people who thought they owned the world. I started walking. My steps were slow, deliberate. "I am coming for you, Blake," I whispered. I walked toward the light, ready to burn it all down. The hunter had entered the clearing, and the wolves had no idea they were already surrounded. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a world wrapped in gold and indifference. The penthouse was a glass box floating above the city, filled with people who measured their worth by the number of zeros in their bank accounts. The air smelled of expensive champagne and ambition. A jazz band played softly in the corner, a saxophone weeping a melody that no one was listening to. I stepped out onto the marble floor. My tattered trench coat was buttoned to my chin, hiding the armor beneath. My flat cap was pulled low, casting a shadow over my eyes. I leaned heavily on my cracked cane, letting it tap a rhythmic warning that only I understood. The conversation in the room died instantly. It started near the elevator and rippled outward like a wave of silence. Heads turned, eyes widened. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips. They looked at me as if a sewer rat had just scurried across the banquet table. I saw the disgust on their faces, the collective recoil of the wealthy faced with the reality of poverty. They did not see a man. They saw a mistake, a blemish on their perfect evening. I shuffled forward, keeping my head down, playing the part. I saw a waiter freeze a tray of hors d'oeuvres balanced on his hand. He looked at me with panic, wondering if he would be blamed for letting the vagrant in. Then I saw him. Blake stood in the center of the room holding a crystal flute. He was surrounded by a circle of admirers laughing at a joke that probably was not funny. He looked perfect in his tuxedo, his hair gleaming under the chandeliers. But when his eyes landed on me, the smile vanished. For a fraction of a second, I saw the truth. I saw the fear. He had expected a phone call from the police telling him there had been a tragic accident at a crosswalk. He had expected me dead. But I was here, a ghost walking. He recovered quickly. I had to give him credit. He was a master of the mask. The fear was replaced by a look of exaggerated pity, a performance designed for his audience. "Excuse me, everyone," Blake announced, his voice projecting with the confidence of a predator. He handed his glass to a passing waiter and walked toward me. He did not run. He strode with open arms like a savior welcoming a lost sheep. The crowd parted for him, watching the spectacle with morbid fascination. Reggie, Blake said loud enough for the back of the room to hear, "I am so glad you found your way here. We were worried you might get lost again." He reached me and placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was hard, digging into the fabric of my coat. It was a warning disguised as a greeting. "You are alive," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "You lucky old bastard." "I am hard to kill, Blake," I whispered back, keeping my voice tremulous. Blake pulled back, smiling benevolently at the crowd. He guided me toward the small stage where the band was playing. He treated me like a fragile object, something that might break or explode if handled too roughly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake called out, taking the microphone from the stunned saxophone player. "Can I have your attention, please?" The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on us, the young golden god and the old broken man. "I want to introduce you to someone very special," Blake said, his hand still clamping my shoulder. "This is Reginald, my father-in-law." A few polite claps rippled through the room. "Reginald has had a hard life," Blake continued, his voice dripping with synthetic honey. "He worked with his hands. He drove trucks. He did what he had to do to survive. But as you can see, time has not been kind to him." I felt the heat rising in my neck. He was stripping me naked in front of his peers. He was turning my life, my work, my sacrifice into a cautionary tale. "Sadly," Blake said, dropping his voice to a somber register, "Reginald has been struggling lately. His mind is not what it used to be. He gets confused. He wanders. Yesterday he came to my office thinking it was a cafeteria. Laughter, cruel, nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Nia standing near the bar. She was wearing a red dress that cost more than my first car. She held a glass of wine with both hands, her knuckles white. She was not laughing. She was staring at the floor, her face burning with shame. But she did not move. She did not speak. She let him do this. "It is heartbreaking, really." Blake went on, warming to his theme. "To see a man lose his dignity, to see him forget who he is. But that is why we are here, isn't it? To help those who cannot help themselves." He looked down at me with a smile that was pure malice. "Reggie, say hello to the nice people." I stood there blinking behind my glasses. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I let my hand shake. "Hello," I croaked. A collective sigh of pity went through the room. "We are taking care of him, of course," Blake assured the crowd. "Nia and I are doing everything we can, but specialized care is expensive. We are looking at some wonderful facilities, places where Reggie can be safe, where he won't hurt himself." He signaled to a waiter who brought over a silver ice bucket. Blake emptied the ice onto the floor and held up the empty bucket. "Tonight is about charity," Blake declared. "We are raising money for the homeless shelter downtown, but I think we should start right here. Charity begins at home, right?" He thrust the bucket into my hands. "Hold this, Reggie," he ordered. I looked at the bucket. It was cold and wet. "What is this for?" I asked, my voice weak. "It is for you," Blake said loud and clear. "Go on, walk around, ask these nice people for help. Every dollar goes to your care fund, to get you the help you desperately need." He wanted me to beg. He wanted the man who owned the building he stood in to walk among his tenants and beg for scraps. He wanted to break my spirit so completely that I would sign anything just to make it stop. I looked at Nia. She finally looked up. Her eyes met mine. There were tears there, but she did not step forward. She took a sip of wine and looked away. She was an accomplice to my execution. "Go on," Reggie Blake urged, giving me a little shove. "Don't be shy. These are generous people." I took a step forward. I held the bucket. I held the... A man in the front row, a banker with a red face, reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. He dropped it into the bucket. "There you go, old-timer," he said. "Buy yourself some soup." Another person dropped in a 10, then another. The sound of money hitting the metal bottom of the bucket was the sound of my humiliation. Clink, clink, clink. I walked a few steps, my cane tapping. I looked at their faces. They felt good about themselves. They were helping the poor senile old man. They had no idea they were funding a gambler debt. I stopped. I felt the weight of the baton in my pocket. I felt the recorder taping every second of this farce. I felt the armor against my chest. I turned back to the stage. Blake was watching me, beaming. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. I walked back up the stairs. "Did you get enough?" Blake asked, leaning into the mic. "Do we need to pass the hat again?" I put the bucket down on the piano with a loud thud. I reached out and took the microphone from Blake's hand. He was so surprised he let go without a fight. "Reggie, what are you doing?" he whispered, his smile faltering. "Give me that." I ignored him. I turned to the crowd. I stood up straight. The tremor in my hands vanished. My posture shifted from the stoop of a victim to the stance of a commander. "Thank you for your generosity," I said. My voice was deep, resonant, and steady. It filled the room, booming off the glass walls. The chatter stopped. The guests looked confused. The senile old man did not sound senile anymore. "My son-in-law tells you I am confused," I continued. "He tells you I forget things. But I find that my memory is actually quite sharp. For instance, I remember numbers very well." Blake stepped forward, reaching for the mic. "Okay, Reggie, that is enough time for your nap." I sidestepped him effortlessly, my movement fluid and precise. "I remember one number specifically," I said, looking directly at the red-faced banker who had given me the $20, $30 million. The room went deadly silent. Blake froze. His face went from smug to pale in a heartbeat. "That is the amount of client funds that have been moved from the primary investment accounts to a holding shell company in the Cayman Islands over the last 6 months," I said. A gasp went through the room. These people were investors. They knew exactly what that meant. "Security!" Blake screamed, his voice cracking. "Get him out of here!" "He is having an episode," I raised my voice over his shouting. "And I have a question for the managing director," I said, turning to look at Blake, who was now sweating profusely. "If the Alpha Fund is up 12% this quarter, as you claimed in your report yesterday, why did you take a high-interest personal loan for $500,000 from a man named Vincent Moretti last Tuesday?" Blake's eyes bulged. He looked like he had been slapped. He lunged for me. "Shut up!" he roared. "You crazy old fool, shut up!" 2 large security guards in black suits rushed the stage. They were on Blake's payroll, not mine. They moved fast. I did not fight them. I did not need to. The bomb had been dropped. The shrapnel was flying. One guard grabbed my left arm, the other grabbed my right. They wrenched the microphone from my hand. "Get him out!" Blake screamed, pointing at the door. "Throw him in the street!" As they dragged me backward, my feet trailing on the floor, I did not struggle. I looked at the crowd. I saw the doubt in their eyes. I saw the whispers starting. I saw phones coming out. And I saw Naya. She was staring at her husband with horror. Not because he was cruel, but because of what I had said. She knew about the loan, no. Her shock was genuine. She was realizing that the golden ticket she had married was counterfeit. I looked at Blake one last time before they pushed me through the service doors. "Check the ledger, Blake!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the hallway. "Check the ledger." The doors swung shut, cutting off the music and the light. The guards dragged me down the service corridor. They were rough. One of them punched me in the ribs. It would have broken a bone in a normal old man. But the armored lining of the tuxedo absorbed the blow. I grunted, but I did not break. "You messed with the wrong guy," Pops, the guard, growled. They shoved me into a freight elevator. "Take him to the loading dock," the guard said to his partner, "and teach him a lesson before you dump him." The doors closed. I was alone with 2 men who enjoyed violence. I straightened my coat. I adjusted my cap. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, Before you try to do something you will regret, you should know two things. What is that? The guard sneered, cracking his knuckles. First, this elevator has a camera that feeds directly to a private server I own. And second, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the weighted polymer baton. I flicked my wrist and it extended with a sharp snap. I am not the one trapped in here with you. The guard eyes widened. You are trapped in here with me. I moved. Fast, efficient, violent. By the time the elevator reached the ground floor, the lesson had been taught, and the only thing dumped on the loading dock would be their employment contracts. I walked out into the night where Marcus was waiting. Drive, Marcus, I said, getting into the car. We have a board meeting to prepare for. And Blake is already dead, I said, watching the penthouse lights recede in the distance. He just doesn't know it yet. The room was soundproofed, designed for hostile takeovers and firing executives without the screams disturbing the secretaries. The walls were padded with gray acoustic fabric, and the only light came from a single recessed bulb that cast harsh shadows on the polished conference table. My hands were zip-tied to the arms of a heavy steel chair. The plastic bit into my wrists, but I did not wince. I had endured worse in interrogation rooms where the floor was dirt and the interrogators spoke Russian. The door burst open and Blake stormed in. He had lost his tuxedo jacket. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar and sweat stains darkened his armpits. He looked like a man unraveling. He slammed the door shut and locked it, his breathing ragged and loud in the small space. You think you are clever, don't you? Blake snarled, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. You think you can embarrass me in front of my investors, in front of my peers? I said nothing. I sat perfectly still, my eyes tracking his every movement. He was erratic, dangerous, but he was also terrified. A terrified man makes mistakes. He stopped pacing and slammed his hands onto the table, leaning into my face. I could smell the champagne on his breath mixed with the bitter scent of fear. Who told you? He demanded. Who told you about the Cayman accounts? Was it Jessica? Did that little traitor talk? I remained silent. My silence was a mirror reflecting his own panic back at him. Answer me, he screamed, striking me across the face with the back of his hand. The blow stung my lips, splitting against my teeth. I tasted iron. I did not turn my head. I looked back at him, my expression unchanged. You hit like a child, Blake, I said calmly. He roared in frustration, grabbing a crystal water pitcher from the center of the table and hurling it against the wall. It shattered, sending shards of glass raining down on the carpet. You are going to sign these papers, Reggie, he hissed, pulling a crumpled document from his pocket. The same power of attorney form from the night before, but now stained with sweat instead of tea. You are going to sign them right now, and then you are going to record a video statement apologizing for your outburst. You are going to say you were confused, that you made it all up, and if I don't, I asked. Blake reached into his pocket and pulled out a box cutter. It was a simple tool used for opening packages, but the blade was sharp and deadly. He extended it with a click. The sound was loud in the quiet room. He walked behind me. I felt the cold metal press against the side of my neck right over the jugular. If you don't, he whispered, his voice trembling, I am going to open you up right here. And then I am going to tell the police you attacked me, that you went crazy, that I had to defend myself. Who are they going to believe, Reggie? The successful director or the senile old man who just made a scene at a party? I felt the blade press harder. A drop of blood trickled down my collar. You are going to kill me, Blake? I asked, my voice steady. In the office of your managing partner. Do you think Jonathan Pierce will appreciate you turning his conference room into a slaughterhouse? Blake laughed. It was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. Jonathan Pierce, he mocked. Jonathan is in Paris, you old fool. He is at a climate summit. He won't be back for a week. By the time he gets here, the carpets will be cleaned and you will be ashes in an urn. I smiled. A small, cold smile. Are you sure about that? I asked. Of course I am sure, Blake shouted, moving the blade to my cheek. He pressed the tip into my skin. Now sign the paper. Sign it or I swear to God I will start carving. I looked at his reflection in the dark glass of the window. He was a boy playing at being a monster. He did not know that monsters were real, and he did not know he was holding a knife to one. You are right about one thing, Blake, I said. What is that? Jonathan Pierce is a very busy man. I paused, letting the tension build. But he never misses a board meeting, I said. Especially an emergency one. Blake frowned, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What are you talking about? There is no board meeting, isn't there?" I asked. "Check your phone." He hesitated. The knife wavered. He reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out his phone. He looked at the screen. His eyes went wide. It was a notification, an urgent alert sent to every partner in the firm. Emergency board meeting, location penthouse, conference room A, attendance mandatory. "What is this?" Blake muttered. "Who called this?" I said. Blake looked at me. You can't call a board meeting. You are a janitor. You are a nobody." "Am I asked. Just then the lock on the door clicked. It was a heavy mechanical sound like a bolt sliding home. But it wasn't locking. It was unlocking. Blake spun around, raising the knife. "Who is there?" "Stay out." The door swung open. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than Blake's salary. He radiated authority. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. It was Jonathan Pierce. Blake dropped the phone. It cracked on the floor. "Jonathan," he stammered, "but you are in Paris." Jonathan stepped into the room. He did not look at Blake. He looked at me. He saw the zip ties. He saw the blood on my neck. He saw the knife in Blake's hand. His face went pale, not with fear, but with rage. "Drop the knife, Blake," Jonathan said, his voice low and dangerous. Blake looked from Jonathan to me and back again. His brain was misfiring. He could not process what was happening. "Jonathan, listen," Blake said, his voice rising in panic. "This man, he is crazy. He attacked me. He broke into the gala. I was just trying to subdue him." Jonathan walked forward. He moved with a purpose that was terrifying. He stopped 2 feet from Blake. "I said, drop the knife," he repeated. Blake's hand shook. "Blake." Hand-eyed. He dropped the box cutter. It clattered on the floor next to the broken pitcher. Jonathan looked at me again. His eyes were full of apology. "Mr. Carter," he said, bowing his head slightly, "I am so sorry. My security team was delayed by the storm. This should never have happened, Mr. Carter," Blake whispered. "Why are you calling him Mr. Carter?" "He is Reggie. He is my father-in-law. He is broke." Jonathan turned to Blake slowly. The look of disgust on his face was absolute. "You idiot," Jonathan said. "You complete and utter idiot." He pointed at me. "This man is not broke," Jonathan said. "This man owns the building we are standing in. He owns the debt on this firm, and more importantly, he owns the holding company that signs my paycheck." Blake's mouth fell open. He looked at me as if I had just turned into a dragon. "What?" he gasped. "That is impossible. He drives a 10-year-old truck. He clips coupons." "It is called a test, Blake," I said, speaking for the first time since Jonathan entered. "And you failed." I flexed my wrists. The zip ties snapped with a sharp crack. I had cut them with a small blade hidden in my cuff minutes ago, waiting for the right moment. I stood up, rubbing my wrists. I walked over to Blake, who was now trembling so hard his knees were knocking together. I picked up the box cutter from the floor. I retracted the blade and put it in my pocket. "You said you wanted to turn me into a crazy person, Blake," I said. "You wanted to take my dignity, my home, my name." I leaned in close. "Now I am going to take yours." I turned to Jonathan. "Start the meeting," I said, "and bring in the auditors. I want every cent accounted for." Jonathan nodded. "Yes, sir. Right away." He turned and walked out of the room, barking orders into his phone. I was left alone with Blake again. But the dynamic had shifted. The knife was gone. The power was gone. He was just a small man in a room with a giant. "Please," Blake whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Reggie, I am sorry." I didn't know. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back. "Save your tears for the judge, Blake," I said. "You are going to need them." I walked out, leaving him in the soundproof room where no one could hear him scream. The interrogation was over. The execution was about to begin. The heavy door of the conference room swung open and hit the wall with a sound like a thunderclap. The vibration traveled through the floorboards and up into the soles of my shoes. Standing in the frame was a silhouette that Blake Sterling recognized instantly. It was the silhouette of salvation, or so he thought. Jonathan Pierce stepped into the room. He was a man who wore authority like a second skin. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed despite the late hour, and his charcoal suit cost more than the average American family earned in a year. Behind him stood 4 men who were clearly not office security. They were tactical specialists wearing earpieces and suits that bulged slightly at the waist. They moved with the silent, synchronized fluidity of a wolf pack entering a clearing. Blake let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. The box cutter slipped from his sweating fingers and clattered onto the carpet. He scrambled backward, putting distance between himself and me as if I were the one who had just been holding a weapon to his throat. His face transformed instantly. The mask of the sadistic torturer vanished, replaced by the mask of the victim. It was a transformation so fast and so complete it was almost impressive. "Jonathan, thank God you are here," Blake shouted, his voice cracking with feigned relief. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "This man is insane." He broke in. "He bypassed security. He attacked me, Jonathan. Look at this mess. Look at the glass. He tried to kill me." I stood perfectly still. I did not speak. I did not defend myself. I did not need to. I rubbed my wrists where the zip ties had cut into my skin, feeling the blood return to my hands. I watched Jonathan face. Jonathan did not look at Blake. His eyes were locked on me. He scanned the room, taking in the shattered water pitcher, the zip ties on the floor, the box cutter near my feet, and the thin line of blood on my neck. His expression remained unreadable, a mask of stone carved by decades of high-stakes poker. Blake mistook the silence for confusion. He rushed forward, closing the distance to his boss, trying to sell the lie with proximity. "We need to call the police immediately," Blake babbled, his hands waving frantically. "He is dangerous, Jonathan. He is senile and violent. He has been stalking me. He claims he owns the building. Can you believe that? He is having a psychotic break. I was just trying to restrain him until security arrived. I saved the firm, Jonathan. I saved us from a scandal." Blake reached out to grab Jonathan's arm, seeking an ally, seeking comfort. That was his mistake. Jonathan moved. It was a motion of pure controlled violence. He did not step back. He stepped into the swing, his hand connected with Blake's cheek with a sound that cracked like a whip. Slap. It was not a punch. A punch is a fight between equals. A slap is a correction. It is a punishment delivered from a master to a servant. Blake's head snapped back. He stumbled, losing his balance and crashing into the side of the mahogany conference table. He clutched his face, staring at Jonathan with wide disbelief. The red imprint of a hand began to bloom on his pale skin. Jonathan Blake gasped, tears springing to his eyes. "What are you doing? He is the intruder. He is the threat." "Silence," Jonathan roared. The voice was not the polite tone of a managing partner. It was the voice of a man who commanded billions. It filled the soundproof room, bouncing off the padded walls. Blake's mouth snapped shut. He shrank back, cowering against the table. Jonathan turned away from him. He adjusted his cufflinks, taking a moment to compose himself. Then he walked toward me. He did not walk with the swagger of a boss. He walked with the humility of a subordinate. He stopped 3 feet in front of me. He looked at the blood on my collar. He looked at the cheap, tattered trench coat I was still wearing. He looked at the old flat cap on my head. And then Jonathan Pierce, the Titan of Wall Street, the man who appeared on the covers of financial magazines, the man Blake Sterling worshipped as a god, did something that made my son-in-law stop breathing. Jonathan went down on one knee. He bowed his head, lowering his eyes to the level of my waist. It was a gesture of absolute submission, a gesture of profound apology. "Mr. Chairman," Jonathan said, his voice trembling slightly, "please forgive me." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Blake let out a small, strangled squeak. I looked down at Jonathan. I saw the genuine fear in his posture. He knew what I was capable of. He knew that I did not tolerate incompetence, and he knew that allowing a junior director to hold a knife to my throat was the definition of incompetence. "You are late, Jonathan," I said. My voice was low, calm, and devoid of warmth. "I am so sorry," Sir Jonathan said, speaking to the floor. The storm over the Atlantic grounded the jet in Paris. We were stuck on the tarmac for 6 hours. I tried to call, but the secure line was jammed. I came straight from the airfield as soon as we landed. "You missed the gala," I said. I heard Sir Jonathan replied. "I received the report from the security team in the car. I take full responsibility. This breach of protocol is unacceptable. I failed to protect you." "Stand up, Jonathan," I said. "You are ruining your suit." Jonathan stood up slowly. He kept his head bowed slightly, refusing to meet my eyes directly. He signaled to the security team behind him. 2 of the men stepped forward carrying a large metallic medical case. Check the chairman injuries, Jonathan ordered. Now. No, I said, raising a hand. I am fine. It is just a scratch. I looked past Jonathan to Blake. My son-in-law was sliding down the side of the table until he hit the floor. His face was gray. His eyes were darting between me and Jonathan, trying to process the data, trying to make the math work. It was impossible. It defied every law of his universe. Reggie the truck driver was the chairman. Reggie the vagrant was the boss. Chairman Blake whispered, his voice barely audible. Jonathan, why are you calling him that? He is nobody. Jonathan turned slowly. The look he gave Blake was one of pure disgust. It was the look a man gives to something he stepped in on the sidewalk. You imbecile, Jonathan said. You blind, arrogant imbecile. He pointed at me, his hand open and respectful. This man is Reginald Carter, Jonathan declared. He is the founder and sole proprietor of Carter Holdings. He owns the majority stake in Sterling Capital. He owns the debt you leveraged. He owns the building you are sitting in. He owns the jet I flew in on. Blake shook his head. No. He drives a truck. He lives in a shack. I saw it. He lives where he chooses to live, Jonathan snapped. He drives what he chooses to drive. He sold his logistics empire 10 years ago for $100 million cash. He took that money and built a shadow portfolio that makes this firm look like a lemonade stand. He bought us a decade ago, Blake. He bought us to diversify. And he kept his name off the door because he wanted to see who we really were when we thought no one was watching. I watched Blake face as the truth hit him. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. The structural beams of his reality gave way. The arrogance, the superiority, the racism, it all crumbled into dust. He realized that every insult he had thrown at me, every sneer, every threat, had been recorded in the ledger of a man who owned his future. He realized that the ticket he thought he was punching was actually a guillotine. Reggie Blake stammered, trying to stand up but failing. Reggie, please. I didn't know. If I had known, if you had known I was rich, you would have treated me with respect. I finished for him. Is that it, Blake? Yes. No, I mean... Blake choked on his own words. We are family, Reggie. Family. I laughed. It was a dry, harsh sound. Family, I repeated. You held a knife to my throat, Blake. You threatened to destroy my daughter's life if I did not sign over my home. You called me a slur in this very room 5 minutes ago. Do not talk to me about family. I reached up and undid the top button of my trench coat. My fingers moved methodically. Jonathan, I said, keeping my eyes on Blake, why did I buy this firm? Because you value insight, sir, Jonathan recited instantly. You wanted a firm that saw value where others saw risk. You wanted analysts who looked beneath the surface. Exactly, I said, unbuttoning the second button. I shrugged the tattered trench coat off my shoulders. It fell to the floor, pooling around my feet like a shed skin. I stood there in the midnight blue bespoke tuxedo. The silk lapels caught the light. The fit was perfect, emphasizing the width of my shoulders and the straightness of my spine. I adjusted my cuffs. The diamond cufflinks sparkled cold and hard. I looked at Blake. I was no longer the old man he had dragged out of the lobby. I was the Titan. I was the man who had survived the jungle and conquered the boardroom. I bought this firm to find talent, I said, my voice filling the room. And instead, I find you. A man who looks at a book by its cover and assumes he knows the story. A man who gambles with money that is not his. A man who treats people like dirt because he thinks they cannot fight back. I walked toward him. My footsteps were heavy and assured. You failed the test, Blake, I said. You failed as an investor. You failed as a husband. And you failed as a human being. I stopped in front of him. I looked down. Jonathan, I said without looking away from Blake, terrified eyes. Yes, Mr. Chairman, is the board assembled? Yes, sir. The other partners are on the secure video link in the main boardroom. They are waiting for your command. Good, I said. I reached into the inner pocket of my tuxedo jacket and pulled out a fresh, crisp handkerchief. I dabbed the drop of blood from my neck. I looked at the red stain on the white cloth. Blake Sterling, I said, my voice sounding like a gavel striking wood. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Your assets are frozen pending a forensic audit. And your security clearance is revoked, but... Blake whispered, tears streaming down his face. My clients, my portfolio. Your portfolio belongs to me now, I said. Just like your debt. I turned to Jonathan. Start the meeting I ordered. I want to address the partners. I want them to see exactly what kind of rot we have allowed to grow in this office. And bring the auditors. I want every penny he stole accounted for. If he bought a pack of gum with client money, I want to know about it. Yes, sir, Jonathan said. He gestured to the security team. Get him up. Bring him to the boardroom. Two of the guards hauled Blake to his feet. He was limp, weeping openly now. He looked at me with pleading eyes. Nia, he sobbed. What about Nia? She is your daughter. You cannot destroy her husband. I stepped close to him one last time. I leaned in so only he could hear. Nia is my daughter, I whispered. And that is why I am going to save her from you. You thought she was a ticket, Blake. But you forgot one thing. What he breathed. Tickets expire. I signaled the guards. They dragged him out of the room, his expensive shoes dragging on the carpet he used to think he owned. I stood alone in the conference room with Jonathan. He looked at me with concern. Are you ready for this, sir? Jonathan asked. It will be a bloodbath. The market will react. Let it react, I said, smoothing my jacket. I built this empire on chaos, Jonathan. I am not afraid of a little noise. I walked toward the door. Let's go, I said. I have a speech to make, and after that I have a daughter to educate. We walked out of the soundproof room and into the hallway. The lights of the office were bright and harsh. The stage was set for the final act, and I was ready to bring the curtain down. The hallway outside the soundproof room was blindingly bright compared to the dim interrogation chamber we had just left. I walked in the center of the formation, flanked by Jonathan Pierce on my right and the 4 tactical security officers forming a protective diamond around us. Behind us, 2 more guards dragged Blake Sterling, who was now a sobbing mess of expensive fabric and ruined ambition. We marched toward the double doors that led back to the main ballroom. I could hear the murmur of the crowd inside. They were waiting, they were confused, they had seen an old man dragged out, and now they were wondering why the music had stopped and where their host had gone. Jonathan looked at me. Are you sure about this, sir, doing this publicly? It will destroy the firm reputation. The stock will tank tomorrow morning. I adjusted my cufflinks. Let it tank, Jonathan. I will buy the dip. Sometimes you have to burn the field to kill the weeds. This is not just about punishment. It is about transparency. If we hide this, we are complicit. If we expose it, we are heroes who cleaned house. Jonathan nodded, understanding the brutal calculus. Yes, sir. We reached the doors. I stopped. I turned to one of the security specialists, a young man with a tablet strapped to his forearm. Is the feed ready? I asked. Yes, Mr. Carter, he replied, tapping the screen. I have bypassed the ballroom AV system. I have remote access to the main projector and the sound system. Your laptop is mirrored. Good, I said. When I give the signal, override their presentation. Show them the truth. I pushed the doors open. The ballroom was restless. The guests were standing in clusters, holding their champagne glasses, whispering. Nia was near the stage, looking anxious, her eyes scanning the room for her husband. When she saw us enter, the crowd fell silent. They saw Jonathan Pierce, the managing partner, walking with a grim expression. They saw Blake Sterling, disheveled and weeping, held up by guards. And in the center they saw me, not the vagrant in the trench coat, but a man in a tuxedo that fit like armor, walking with the stride of a king. I walked straight to the stage. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I did not look at them. I looked at the microphone stand that was still waiting where I had left it. I stepped up onto the platform. The lights were hot. I took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice steady and commanding. I apologize for the interruption earlier. My name is Reginald Carter, and I am the chairman of Carter Holdings, the parent company of Sterling Capital. A gasp went through the room. Whispers erupted. Carter Holdings, the logistics giant. The shadow firm I saw Nia face in the front row. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes went wide. She looked from me to Blake, then back to me. The pieces were falling into place, but her mind was rejecting the picture. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, I continued. A celebration of success, of charity, of family. But there can be no celebration built on a foundation of lies. I signaled the technician. Screen, I commanded. The massive projection screen behind me, which had been displaying the firm logo, flickered. The image distorted, then resolved into something else. It was not a slide deck. It was a live feed of a bank ledger. The room went deadly silent. What you are looking at, I said, turning to point at the screen, is the internal transaction history of the Alpha Fund, the fund many of you are invested in, the fund managed by my son-in-law, Blake Sterling. The numbers on the screen were scrolling. Red numbers. Blake Sterling has been running a shadow ledger. I explained, my voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. For the last 18 months, he has been systematically siphoning client funds into unauthorized high-risk cryptocurrency accounts. I pointed to a specific line item. Here on March 4th, $2 million transferred to a shell company in the Caymans. Here on April 10th, another $3 million, and here last week, $5 million removed to cover a margin call on a personal bet. Panic began to ripple through the crowd. Men in suits started pulling out their phones, frantically checking their accounts. A woman in a sequined dress dropped her glass. It shattered, but no one cared. "He told us the fund was up 12%, a man shouted from the back. "He lied," I said simply. "The fund is insolvent. The money is gone." Blake, who had been slumped in the grip of the guards, suddenly found a burst of desperate energy. He saw his life disintegrating on a 40-foot screen. "No," he screamed, struggling against his captors. "That is a lie. He is hacking the system. It is a deep fake. Don't listen to him." He broke free from one guard and lunged toward the stage. He was going for the cables. He wanted to pull the plug, to kill the image, to stop the truth. He scrambled up the stairs, panting, his eyes wild. I did not move. I did not flinch. One of my personal security detail, a man named Marcus, who had driven me here, stepped out of the shadows. He did not tackle Blake. He did not punch him. He simply extended one arm, rigid as a steel bar. Blake ran right into it. He hit Marcus' hand with his chest and stopped dead as if he had run into a wall. Marcus did not budge. He looked at Blake with bored indifference. "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Marcus said calmly. Blake crumbled. He fell to his knees on the stage, sobbing. I turned back to the screen. "Next slide," I ordered. The image changed. Now it showed a series of wire transfers, personal ones. "Here we see where some of that money went," I said. "Not to investments, not to charity, but to a woman named Jessica Vane, your receptionist, Blake." A photo appeared on the screen. It was a surveillance shot of Blake and Jessica kissing in his office, then another of a receipt for a diamond necklace. $25,000. Client money. I heard a scream from the audience. It was Nia. She was staring at the screen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Blake, who was curled in a ball on the stage. She looked at the woman in the photo, the receptionist she had smiled at, the woman she had brought coffee to. And finally I said, the screen changing one last time, "The reason for tonight, desperation." A document appeared. It was a promissory note, a loan agreement with a high interest rate signed by Blake Sterling. The lender was listed as a shell corporation, but I knew the name behind it. Vincent Moretti, $500,000, I read. Due this Friday. Collateral, my house. The crowd murmured in horror. A man gambling away his client's money, cheating on his wife, and trying to sell his father-in-law home to pay a loan shark. It was a trifecta of depravity. I looked down at Blake. He was not moving. He was broken. Blake Sterling. I announced, my voice booming. "You are hereby terminated from your position at Sterling Capital, effective immediately." I turned to the crowd. Furthermore, I continued, as the chairman of the holding company, I am freezing all assets associated with Mr. Sterling. His bank accounts, his properties, his vehicles, everything will be liquidated to restitute the funds stolen from this firm clients. A man in the front row shouted, "But what about our money? Is it all gone?" I looked him in the eye. "No," I said. "Carter Holdings will cover the loss. I am injecting $30 million of my own capital into the fund tomorrow morning. No client will lose a dime. The only person losing anything tonight is the man on this stage." A wave of relief washed over the room, followed immediately by a round of applause. It started slow, then grew louder. They were clapping for their money, but they were also clapping for the justice. I walked over to Blake. I knelt down so I was close to his ear. The microphone picked up my whisper, broadcasting it to the silent room. "You wanted to be a big shot, Blake," I said. "You wanted to play with the heavyweights. Well, now you know. Heavyweights don't play. We crush." I stood up and signaled the guards. "Get him out of here," I said. "The police are waiting in the lobby." The guards hauled Blake up. He was limp, a rag doll. He did not look at me. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at the floor. As they dragged him away, passing Nia, she did not reach out to him. She did not try to stop them. She just watched him go, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. I watched him disappear through the double doors, the same doors I had walked through as a beggar an hour ago. I turned back to the microphone. "Please enjoy the rest of your evening," I said. "The bar is open. And the drinks are on, Blake." I dropped the mic. It hit the floor with a thud. I walked off the stage. Jonathan Pierce was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. He looked pale but respectful. "That was effective, sir," he said. "It was necessary, Jonathan," I said. "Now clean this up. I have one more loose end to tie up." I looked across the room at Nia. She was standing alone in the middle of the crowd, a red island in a sea of black tuxedos. She looked small. She looked lost. I walked toward her. The crowd parted again, letting the father go to his daughter. It was time for the hardest part of the night, the part where I had to be a dad, not a chairman, and that was a role I had not played well in a long time. But tonight, I was going to try. The silence in the ballroom was heavy and suffocating like the air before a tornado touches down. I stood on the stage watching my son-in-law being dragged toward the exit by the security team. His tuxedo was ruined, his dignity was gone, and his future was erased. But the storm was not over. The eye of the hurricane was moving toward me now in a red dress. Nia came running through the parted crowd. Her heels clicked frantically on the polished floor. Her face was a mask of fury that I recognized from her teenage years, but it was twisted now by something darker. She was not running to me for comfort. She was not running to thank me for saving her from a criminal. She was running to attack. She stopped at the foot of the stage, her chest heaving. Her eyes were wild, darting between the screen behind me where the evidence of Blake theft was still frozen, and my face. Denial is a powerful drug. It blinds you to the fire even as your skin begins to burn, and Nia was overdosing on it. "Dad!" she screamed, her voice shrill and breaking. "What have you done?" I looked down at her. I did not step back. I held the microphone at my side, my other hand resting in my pocket, touching the cold steel of the baton. "I exposed a thief, Nia," I said calmly. "You ruined him!" she yelled, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "You ruined everything. This is jealousy, isn't it? That is all this is. You are jealous because Blake is successful. You are jealous because he is a partner at a firm you could never even get an interview at. You are a bitter old man who cannot stand to see his children do better than him." The crowd gasped. The accusation was so absurd, so detached from the reality of what they had just witnessed on the screen, that it was almost pitiable. But to Nia, it was the only logic that made sense. She had built her entire identity around Blake's success. If he was a fraud, then she was a fraud, and she could not survive that truth. "He stole $30 million, Nia," I said, pointing at the screen. "Look at the numbers." "I don't care about numbers," she shrieked, stomping her foot like a child. "He can explain it. There is always an explanation. You hacked the system. You made it look bad. You wanted to humiliate him because he tried to help you, because he wanted to put you in a home. You are vindictive. You are evil." She climbed the stairs to the stage. She stood toe-to-toe with me. She was shaking with rage. She raised her hand as if to slap me. I did not flinch. I looked her in the eye. "Go ahead, Nia," I said softly. "Hit me. If that will make the truth go away, hit me." She froze. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling. She could not do it. Somewhere deep inside, the daughter I raised was still fighting for control. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket. I did not pull out a weapon. I pulled out a thick white envelope. It was not sealed. "I did not want to show you this," I said, my voice heavy with sadness. "I wanted to spare you the details, but you leave me no choice. You need to see the whole picture." I pressed the envelope into her hand. She took it reflexively. "What is this?" she whispered, her anger wavering for a second, replaced by fear. "It is the rest of the ledger," I said. "Open it." She looked at me, then at the envelope. Her fingers shook as she pulled out the stack of high-resolution photographs. The first photo was a picture of Blake in his office. He was not working. He was on the leather sofa. And he was not alone. Jessica, the receptionist, the woman Nia had brought coffee to the woman Nia had called sweet, was straddling him. Their faces were clear. There was no denying who they were. Nia let out a sound that was not a word. It was a noise of pure animal pain. She dropped the photo. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up for the front row to see. She looked at the next one. It was a close-up of a text message exchange on Blake's phone. "Jessica, when are you going to leave her Blake soon, baby? Once I get the old man to sign the house over, I just need the cash. Nia is suffocating me. She is so desperate, it is pathetic." Nia's hand flew to her mouth. She read the words over and over. Desperate. Pathetic. "Keep looking," I said gently. "Look at the receipts." She pulled out a bank statement. It highlighted a transfer of $50,000. "That money," I said, pointing to the paper. "That came from your joint savings account, Nia." The money you saved from your bonus last year. The money you told me you were saving for a nursery." Nia nodded, tears blinding her. "Yes, for the baby. We were trying." "Blake spent it yesterday," I said. Nia looked at the item line. It was not an investment. It was a wire transfer to a real estate agency in the city. "He bought a condo, Nia. A penthouse in the arts district. But he did not put your name on the deed." She flipped to the next page. A copy of the deed. Owner, Jessica Vane. The scream that tore out of Nia's throat was primal. It was the sound of a heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. She dropped the papers. They scattered around her feet like dead leaves. She fell to her knees, her hands clutching her chest as if she had been shot. "He used my money," she sobbed, rocking back and forth. "He used my money to buy her a house. He told me he loved me. He told me I was his queen." "He lied," I said, kneeling beside her. "He never loved you, Nia. He loved what you could give him. He loved the access. He loved the image. And when the money ran out, he was going to throw you away." I put a hand on her shoulder, trying to comfort her, but she recoiled. She stood up, her eyes wild. She was not looking at me anymore. She was looking at the back of the room. The security guards had stopped near the double doors. They had paused to watch the drama unfold, holding Blake between them. Blake was watching too. He was not looking at Nia with remorse. He was looking at her with annoyance. He was looking at his watch. Nia saw his face. She saw the boredom. She saw the contempt, and she snapped. "Blake," she screamed. She ran. She did not run like a lady in a red dress. She ran like a fury. She leaped off the stage, ignoring the stares. She sprinted across the ballroom floor, pushing startled guests out of her way. Blake saw her coming. He tried to step back, but the guards held him firm. They did not know if they should let him go or protect him. They hesitated. Nia collided with him. She was a whirlwind of nails and teeth. She clawed at his face. She grabbed his hair. She ripped his shirt. "You bastard," she shrieked. "You stole from me. You cheated on me. I gave you everything." Blake yelled in pain as her nails raked down his cheek, drawing blood. "Get off me! Get her off me!" He struggled, trying to fend off her blows. But Nia was fueled by the rage of a woman who realizes her entire life was a lie. She was relentless. She slapped him. She punched him. She spat in his face. Why, she screamed. "Why did you do it? I loved you. I defended you against my own father. I chose you." Blake finally managed to free one arm. He did not try to calm her down. He did not try to hold her hands. He shoved her. He put his hand on her chest and pushed with all his strength. Nia flew backward. She lost her footing in her high heels and crashed to the floor. She landed hard, hitting her head on the marble with a sickening thud. She slid a few feet, her red dress bunching up around her legs. The room gasped. Blake stood over her, panting, his face bleeding, his shirt torn. The mask was gone completely now. There was no charm left. No sophistication, just the ugly, brutal face of a coward. "Shut up!" he roared at her, his voice echoing in the silent hall. "Just shut up, you stupid woman. I have tolerated you enough." Nia looked up at him, dazed, tears mixing with the mascara on her cheeks. "Blake, I am sick of your voice," Blake shouted, spitting the words at her. "I am sick of your neediness. I am sick of your cheap perfume and your desperate attempts to be high class. You were never high class, Nia. You were just a ticket to your father money. And now that the ticket is worthless, I do not need you anymore." He looked around the room, challenging anyone to speak. "Yeah, that is right," he sneered at the crowd. "I used her. So what? She was easy to use. She begged to be used. She would have sold her own father down the river just to keep me happy. Don't look at me like I am the villain. She is just as bad as I am." I watched from the stage. My heart was breaking for my daughter, but I knew this was necessary. She needed to hear this. She needed to see him without the filter of love. She needed to see the monster. Nia sat on the floor, staring up at the man she had worshipped, the man she had ridiculed me for, the man she had betrayed her family for. And in his eyes, she saw absolutely nothing. No love, no regret, not even pity, just cold, hard calculation. She started to cry again, but this time it was different. It was quiet. It was the crying of someone who has lost hope. Blake turned to the guards. "Take me to the police," he said. "I would rather be in a cell than spend another minute listening to her whine." The guards looked at me for instructions. I nodded slowly. "Take him," I said into the microphone. They dragged Blake through the doors. He did not look back. Nia remained on the floor, a crumpled heap of red silk and broken dreams. She was utterly alone in the center of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of her life. I stepped off the stage and began the long walk toward her. The crowd parted for me again, but this time there was no applause. There was only a heavy, respectful silence. I walked to where my daughter lay. I looked down at her. I saw the bruises starting to form on her arms. I saw the blood on her fingernails. She looked up at me. Her eyes were hollow. "Dad," she whispered. "He never loved me." "No," I said softly. "He didn't." She closed her eyes and let her head drop. "I have nothing," she sobbed. "I have nothing left." I reached down. I did not offer her a hand up. Not yet. She needed to feel the floor. She needed to know what rock bottom felt like so she would never come back here again. "You have one thing left, Nia," I said. She looked at me, confusion swimming in her tear-filled eyes. "What? You have the truth," I said. "And the truth is the only foundation that can hold the weight of a real life." I stood there guarding her while she cried, waiting for the moment when she would be ready to stand up on her own. It would be a long wait, but I had time. I had nowhere else to be. The ballroom was a frozen tableau of shock. The guests stood paralyzed, clutching their drinks like shields. Nia lay sobbing on the floor, a broken heap of red silk, and Blake Sterling, the man who thought he ruled the world, was backed into a corner by the double doors, his chest heaving, his eyes darting like a trapped rat. The security guards moved to grab him again. "Don't touch me!" Blake screamed. He reached into his pocket. The movement was jerky, desperate. When his hand came out, it was holding the box cutter, the same silver utility knife he had held to my throat in the soundproof room less than an hour ago. He extended the blade with a sharp click. The light from the chandeliers glinted off the razor edge. "Back off," he roared, swinging the blade in a wide arc. "I will kill anyone who comes near me." The guards hesitated. They were paid to bounce drunks and check IDs, not to fight a man with a weapon who had nothing left to lose. They stepped back, giving him space. Blake's eyes locked on me. He did not look at Jonathan. He did not look at his wife. He looked at the old man in the tuxedo, the source of his ruin. "You," he hissed. "This is all your fault. You ruined my life. You ruined my reputation." He took a step toward the stage. "I did not ruin you, Blake," I said, my voice calm amidst the panic. "You ruined yourself. I just turned on the lights." "Shut up," Blake shrieked. "Just shut up. If I am going down, I am taking you with me. I am going to carve that smug look off your face," he charged. Screams erupted from the crowd. Jonathan Pierce shouted a warning. My personal security detail reached for their weapons, but they were too far away on the sides of the stage. Blake was fast fueled by the hysterical strength of a man facing the end of his existence. He sprinted up the stairs, the knife held low, ready to gut me. Time did not slow down. That is a myth from the movies. In combat, time speeds up. Your heart rate sinks with the rhythm of the threat, and your mind clears of everything except geometry and physics. I watched him come. I saw the amateur way he held the knife. I saw his weight shifted too far forward. I saw his eyes fixed on my throat, blind to everything else. I did not move my feet. I shifted my grip on my cane. It was made of hickory, dense and solid, with a heavy brass head. It was not just a walking aid. It was an extension of my arm. Blake reached the top of the stairs. He lunged. "Die, old man," he screamed. I did not retreat. I stepped into his guard. My movement was a blur, a reflex honed in the mud of the Mekong Delta 50 years ago. I brought the cane up in a short, sharp arc. The brass head connected with Blake's wrist, the one holding the knife. Crack! The sound of bone breaking was sickeningly loud. Blake howled, his hand spasmed, opening involuntarily. The box cutter flew out of his grip, spinning through the air and landing harmlessly near the piano. But I was not done. A threat is not neutralized until it is on the ground. As Blake clutched his broken wrist, stumbling forward from his own momentum, I pivoted. I swung the cane again, this time aiming lower. I put my hip into the swing, channeling the torque of my entire body into the blow. The cane struck the side of his knee. Pop! Blake's leg buckled backward at an angle nature never intended. He collapsed instantly, hitting the stage face first with a thud that shook the floorboards. He let out a sound that was not human, a guttural wail of pure agony. He writhed on the floor, clutching his leg, crying snot and tears mixing with the blood from his nose. I stood over him. I was breathing evenly. My pulse was steady. I adjusted my cuffs. "I told you, Blake," I said, looking down at him. Heavyweights don't play. The room was silent again, save for Blake whimpering. The guests stared at me with a new kind of awe. They had seen the billionaire. Now they saw the soldier. Jonathan ran up the stairs. "Sir, are you all right?" "I am fine, Jonathan," I said, dusting a speck of lint from my lapel. "Just a little exercise." Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the room burst open. "Police, drop it. Everyone stay where you are." A dozen officers in tactical gear swarmed into the ballroom, rifles raised. Sarah had timed it perfectly. "Over here," I called out, raising my hand. "The suspect is subdued." The officers rushed the stage. They saw Blake on the floor, broken and weeping. They saw the knife. They saw me standing calmly with my cane. 2 officers grabbed Blake. They hauled him up, ignoring his screams of pain, as they cuffed his hands behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent," an officer recited. Blake spat blood on the floor. "Get off me. Do you know who I am? I am a partner at Sterling Capital. That man assaulted me. He broke my leg." The officer looked at me, then back at Blake. "Sir, you are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, fraud, and assault with a deadly weapon. We have the video feed from the conference room." Blake's eyes went wide. The video feed. He had forgotten about the cameras in the interrogation room. "No," he whispered. "No, that was a misunderstanding." The officers began to drag him away. He tried to walk, but his broken leg would not support him, so they dragged him. As they passed Nia, who was still sitting on the floor, staring at nothing, Blake turned his head. "Nia," he screamed, "call my lawyer. Get me out of here. Do something, you useless cow." Nia did not move. She did not blink. She watched him go as if he were a stranger being taken away to a place she had never been. I walked to the edge of the stage. "Officer," I said to the sergeant in charge. "Yes, sir." "Be careful with him," I said, pointing at Blake. "He owes a lot of money to some very bad people. I would hate for him to have an accident before he stands trial." The sergeant nodded, understanding the subtext. "We will put him in protective custody, sir." "Good." I watched them haul him out the doors. The man who had mocked me in the lobby, the man who had thrown away my wife, Jambalaya, the man who had tried to kill me. He was gone, erased. I turned back to the room. The guests were still watching, waiting for the final word. "The show is over," I said simply. "Go home. Check your portfolios in the morning." I walked down the stairs. My knee ached slightly, a reminder of my age, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Jonathan walked beside me. "What now, sir?" "Now," I said, looking toward the exit where Sarah was waiting. "Now we rebuild. But first I need a drink, and not champagne." I walked toward the door, leaving the wreckage of the gala behind. I passed Nia one last time. She was still on the floor, weeping softly into her hands. I stopped. I looked at my daughter. She was broken. She was humiliated. She was alone. But she was free. She just didn't know it yet. I signaled to Marcus. "Take her to the car," I said. "Take her to the hotel. Make sure she is safe." "Yes, sir," Marcus said gently, helping Nia to her feet. I walked out into the cool night air. The rain had started again, washing the city clean. I took a deep breath. "One down," I whispered. But the war wasn't over. There was still a lesson to be taught. And Nia class was just beginning. The sirens faded into the distance, carrying away the wreckage of my son-in-law. The red and blue lights stopped flashing against the ballroom windows, leaving us in the stark, unforgiving glare of the house lights. The party was over. The guests had fled like rats on a sinking ship, leaving behind half-empty glasses and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with fear. The music was gone. The applause was gone. All that remained was the silence of a battlefield after the shooting stops. I stood center stage, my hand resting on the cane that had just broken a man bone. My breathing was steady, but my heart felt heavy like a stone sinking in deep water. I looked down at the floor where the last casualty of the war remained. Nia was crawling toward me. She moved slowly, dragging herself across the polished marble. Her red dress, the one she had worn to outshine everyone, was torn at the hem and stained with the dirt of the floor. Her hair, once sprayed into a helmet of perfection, hung in loose tangled strands around her face. Her makeup ran in black rivers down her cheeks. She did not look like a socialite anymore. She looked like a survivor of a shipwreck washing up on a hostile shore. She reached the edge of the stage. She reached out with trembling hands and grabbed the cuff of my trousers. She clung to my leg like a drowning woman clutching a piece of driftwood. "Daddy," she sobbed. The word cracked in the middle. It was a sound I had not heard in 20 years. Not like this, not with that raw, desperate need. Daddy, please, I am sorry, I was so wrong. He tricked me. He manipulated me. I did not know he was stealing. I did not know he was evil. Please, Daddy, take me home. I looked down at her. I saw the top of her head, the dark roots showing through the expensive dye job. Take you home, I asked, my voice echoing in the empty room. Which home? Nia. The cottage you called a dump. The shack that smelled of old age. Or did you mean this building which you now know I own? No, she cried, tightening her grip on my leg. Home with you, anywhere. I just want to go home. I made a mistake. I chose the wrong man. But I am your daughter. You have to help me. You have to fix this. I closed my eyes for a second. In the darkness behind my eyelids, memory ambushed me. I saw Nia at 5 years old in a pink dress running toward me with a scraped knee, crying for me to kiss it better. I saw her at 10 holding up a report card, beaming with pride because she wanted to impress me. I saw her at 18 packing for college, promising she would make me proud. My heart wanted to bend. It wanted to reach down, scoop her up and tell her everything was going to be fine. It wanted to write a check, buy her a new condo, and pretend the last 5 years never happened. That is what a father does. He protects. He fixes. But then the image changed. I saw Nia in the lobby yesterday, turning her head away as the security guard grabbed my arm. I saw her putting on sunglasses to hide her shame. I heard her voice in the kitchen telling Blake I was an anchor dragging her down. I saw her standing silently while her husband humiliated me on this very stage holding a bucket for charity. She had not been manipulated into those moments. She had chosen them. She had chosen the illusion of status over the reality of blood. And if I fixed this for her now, if I cushioned her fall, I would not be saving her. I would be destroying her. I would be teaching her that betrayal has no cost. I opened my eyes. The softness was gone. The resolve was back. Get up, Nia, I said. She looked up at me, blinking through her tears. What? Stand up, I commanded. Do not crawl. Do not beg. You are a Carter. Act like it. She slowly pulled herself up, using my leg for support until she was standing. She wobbled on her broken heel. She looked at me with hope gleaming in her eyes. She thought I was going to hug her. She thought the checkbook was opening. I love you, Nia, she whispered. You are my dad. You are all I have left. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo. I bypassed the handkerchief I had used to wipe Blake blood. I reached deeper until my fingers touched the thick textured paper of the envelope I had placed there this morning. I pulled it out. It was heavy. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Do you know what this is? I asked, holding it up. Nia shook her head. Her eyes locked on the paper. Is it money? She asked. A reflex. Even in her grief, she was looking for the payout. It is my will, I said. Her eyes widened. Hope flared brighter. I went to Sarah's office this morning. I continued keeping my voice flat. Before I came here, before I put on this suit, I sat down and I rewrote my entire estate plan. Nia nodded eagerly, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Okay, Dad. That is good. We can start over. I unfolded the document. The paper crinkled loudly in the silence. I read the clauses I said. I read the numbers. Do you know how much I am worth? Nia. She shook her head. No. Blake said you had millions hidden away. Blake thought. Small, I said. I looked her in the eye. My liquid assets, property holdings, and diversified investments total just over $500 million. Nia gasped. Her mouth fell open. 500 million, $500 million. The number was too big to comprehend. It was enough to buy islands. It was enough to buy governments. It was enough to erase every mistake she had ever made and buy 1,000 new lives. I saw the calculation happen behind her eyes. I saw the grief vanish, replaced by a sudden dizzying greed. She was already spending it. She was already imagining the clothes, the cars, the vindication. She was imagining walking back into her social circle not as the wife of a fraud, but as the heiress of an empire. Oh, Daddy, she breathed, reaching for the paper. We can do so much good. We can be happy. I pulled the paper back out of her reach. We, I asked. Yes, us, you and me. I looked at the document. I looked at the signature at the bottom. "There is no us in this document, Nia," I said. She froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean that this morning I removed you as the beneficiary," I said. The color drained from her face. She looked like a ghost. What she whispered. I established a trust. I explained, my voice clinical and cold. "The Beatrice Carter Foundation, named after your mother. The woman whose vase you watched your husband smash. The woman whose recipe he threw in the trash." Nia shook her head violently. "No, no, Dad, you can't." 100% of my assets," I continued relentlessly. "Every penny, every building, every stock. Upon my death, it all transfers to the foundation. The mission is to provide scholarships for children from the neighborhoods where I grew up. Children who know the value of $1. Children who would never be ashamed of their fathers." Nia lunged for me. She tried to grab the will. "Dad, stop it. You are angry. I get it. But you can't cut me out. I am your daughter. I am your flesh and blood." I caught her wrist. I held it firm. "You are my daughter," I said. "But you are also a stranger. You told Blake I was a burden. You said I was an anchor dragging you down. You said you wanted to live the life you deserved." I released her wrist and pushed her gently but firmly away. "I am granting your wish, Nia," I said. "I am cutting the anchor. You are free." "Free!" she screamed, hysterical now. "I am not free. I am broke. Blake stole everything. I have debts. I have nowhere to go. You are leaving me on the street." I folded the will and put it back in my pocket next to my heart. "You are young," I said. "You are healthy. You have a college degree that I paid for. You have 2 hands and 2 feet. I gestured to the door. "Go out there and use them," I said. "Get a job. Rent a studio apartment. Take the bus. Eat noodles. Learn what it feels like to earn your sleep." "But I can't," she sobbed. "I don't know how." "Then learn," I said. "I did it. Your mother did it. We built this from nothing. If you have our blood in your veins, you will survive. If you don't, well, then the money would not have saved you anyway." Nia stared at me. The realization was setting in. This was not a bluff. This was not a punishment that would end in a week. This was a new reality. The safety net was gone. The golden parachute had been burned. "You hate me," she whispered. "You are doing this because you hate me." I walked close to her one last time. I looked deep into her eyes, searching for the little girl I had lost. "I do not hate you, Nia," I said softly. "I love you enough to let you fall. I love you enough to stop crippling you with my protection." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single $20 bill, the same denomination the banker had thrown into the bucket earlier. I pressed it into her hand. "Here," I said. "This is for a cab or breakfast. Spend it wisely. It is the last money you will ever get from me." I stepped back. I turned my back on her. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. But I kept walking. "Dad," she screamed behind me. "Dad, don't walk away." "Please, I am scared." I kept walking. My cane tapped against the marble floor. Click, click, click. I walked past Jonathan, who was watching with a mixture of awe and sadness. Is she coming with us, sir?" Jonathan asked quietly. "No," I said, staring straight ahead at the exit. "She has her own path to walk." We reached the double doors. Marcus held one open for me. I stepped out into the hallway, leaving the ballroom behind. I heard Nia sobbing echoing in the vast, empty space. It was a lonely sound, a terrifying sound. But it was also the sound of a life finally beginning. She was on her own now. Truly on her own. And for the first time in her life, she had a chance to become something real. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. "Let's go home, Marcus," I said. "To the cottage, sir." "No," I said. "To the estate. I am done hiding." The doors closed, shutting out the sound of my daughter crying. The silence of the elevator was heavy, but it was clean. I had cleaned house. I had balanced the ledger. And now I had a foundation to build. Nia would either sink or swim. The choice was hers, and that was the greatest gift I could give her. The month passed like a long, slow exhale. The city moved on as it always does, digesting the scandal of Sterling Capital and spitting out the bones. The newspapers ran the story for a week, calling it the fall of the Golden Boy. They printed photos of Blake in his tuxedo being dragged out by police, juxtaposed with photos of him in his orange jumpsuit. They called me the silent tycoon, the janitor who owned the building. But I did not read the papers. I was too busy restructuring the wreckage of my daughter life and ensuring that justice was not just a word spoken by a judge, but a sentence served in hell. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was a federal court, a place of high ceilings and heavy wood where hope went to die. I sat in the back row, my hands resting on the head of my cane. I was wearing a charcoal suit, modest but tailored. I did not need to wear the tuxedo anymore. Everyone knew who I was now. Blake Sterling stood before the bench. He had lost 20 pounds in 30 days. His hair was shaved, revealing a scalp pale and vulnerable. He looked small. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a twitching terror. He kept looking back at me, not with hatred, but with a desperate pleading confusion. He still could not understand how the laws of his universe had broken. The judge, a woman with eyes like flint, adjusted her glasses. Blake Sterling. She read her voice echoing in the silent room. On the charges of wire fraud, securities, fraud, embezzlement, and assault with a deadly weapon, this court finds you guilty. Blake's knees buckled. His lawyer, a public defender who looked bored, held him up by the elbow. You betrayed the trust of your investors, the judge continued. You stole from the vulnerable, and you attempted to inflict violence when your crimes were exposed. For these crimes, I sentence you to 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15. 20 years. A sob broke from Blake's throat. It was a wet, pathetic sound. 20 years meant his youth was over. It meant he would be an old man when he saw the sky again. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what I had arranged for him inside. As the bailiffs moved to take him away, I stood up. I walked to the aisle. Blake passed within inches of me. He stopped dragging his feet, his chains rattling. Reggie, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Help me. They will kill me in there. I owe money to the wrong people. Moretti will find me. I looked at him. I did not smile. Moretti is gone. Blake, I said softly. I bought your debt from him 3 weeks ago. Blake's eyes widened with a flicker of hope. You bought it, so I am safe. No, I said, leaning in close. I sold it. Blake blinked. What, I sold your debt? I explained, my voice flat. To a man named Cyrus. He is currently serving life in the same cell block you are going to. He was very interested in acquiring an asset that he could manage personally. The blood drained from Blake's face, leaving him as white as a sheet. He understood. He was not going into prison as a man. He was going in as property. He was a commodity I had traded to ensure his sentence was not just a loss of time, but a daily lesson in humility. Take him away, the bailiff grunted, shoving Blake forward. Blake screamed. It was a high, thin sound of absolute terror. He was dragged through the side door, his chains clanking like the bell of a leper. I watched him go. I felt no joy. I felt no satisfaction. I only felt the cold balance of the ledger finally zeroing out. He had tried to take my life. I had taken his future. It was a fair trade. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining, but the air was cold. It was time for the second part of the sentencing, the part that hurt. I got into the car where Marcus was waiting. To the building, Marcus, I said. We drove through the city to the tower that used to be Sterling Capital. It was now Beatrice Holdings. The sign had been changed yesterday. I walked into the lobby. It was quiet. The reception desk where Jessica used to sit was empty. She had fled the state the moment the news broke, escaping prosecution by turning state evidence against Blake. I walked across the marble floor. My cane clicked rhythmically. I nodded to the new security guards, men I had vetted personally. They stood straighter when they saw me. I walked toward the elevators, but I stopped. In the corner near the large glass windows, a figure was working. She was wearing a gray jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair was pulled back in a hairnet. She was pushing a heavy industrial mop back and forth across the stone floor. The rhythm was slow, exhausting. It was Nia. She did not look like the woman in the red dress anymore. She looked tired. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing dark circles under her eyes. Her hands, which used to be manicured and soft, were red and chapped from the chemicals. The court had seized everything. The cars, the jewelry, the clothes, even the furniture in the condo Blake had bought for his mistress. Nia was liable for half of the civil debts because her name was on the credit cards Blake had maxed out. She was destitute. I had offered her a job, not as a manager, not as a consultant. I offered her the only job she was qualified for with her current resume, cleaning the building her father owned. She had accepted. She had no choice. It was eat or starve. I walked toward her. She heard my footsteps. She knew the sound of my cane. She stiffened. She stopped mopping, but she did not look up. She stared at the soapy water swirling in the bucket. I stopped 3 feet away. I looked at my daughter. My heart ached. I wanted to tell her to stop. I wanted to write her a check and send her to a spa. I wanted to erase the last month, but I couldn't. If I saved her now, I would lose her forever. She had to save herself. "You missed a spot," I said quietly, pointing to a scuff mark near her shoe. Nia's shoulders shook. She gripped the mop handle so tight her knuckles turned white. For a second I thought she might swing it at me. I thought she might scream, but she didn't. She took a breath. She moved the mop. She scrubbed the mark until it was gone. "Sorry, sir," she whispered. She did not call me Dad. She knew she had lost the right to that name for now. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small rectangular card. It was not a credit card. It was not a check. It was a student ID card for the local community college. I placed it on the edge of the wet floor warning sign. "Tuition is paid," I said. Nia looked at the card. She read the text. "Nursing program, 2 years. It is not a handout," I continued, my voice stern. "It is a loan. You will pay me back every cent when you graduate, with interest, and you will keep working here at night to pay for your rent and your food." Nia looked up at me then. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were not the angry tears of the gala. They were tears of shame and gratitude. She realized that I was giving her a ladder, not an elevator. I was giving her a way to climb out of the hole she had dug, not a rope to pull her out. Why, she asked, her voice cracking. "After everything I said, after everything I did." "Because you are young," I said, "and you have strong hands, and maybe one day you will use them to help people instead of trying to grab things that do not belong to you." I turned away. I did not wait for a thank you. I walked toward the exit. "Dad," she called out. I stopped, but I did not turn around. "I will pay you back," she said. Her voice was stronger now. "I will pay back every cent." "See that you do," I said, "or I will find a better janitor." I walked out of the building. The revolving doors spun behind me, leaving my daughter to her work. Marcus opened the back door of the Rolls-Royce. Sarah was sitting inside waiting for me. She had the final papers for the takeover. "Is it done?" Sarah asked as I slid into the seat. "It is done," I said. "Blake is in a cage, and Nia is in a classroom. Or at least she will be." "You are a hard man," Reggie Sarah said, looking at me with a mixture of fear and admiration. "I am a father, Sarah," I said, looking out the window as the car pulled away. "And sometimes being a father means being the villain in your child's story so they can become the hero in their own." I watched the city pass by. I saw the people walking on the sidewalks, living their lives, fighting their battles. I had fought mine. I had won. But the victory tasted like ash and hope. "Take me to the cemetery, Marcus," I said. It was time to tell Beatrice that our work was finished. It was time to rest, at least until the next wolf came knocking at the door. And if they did come, they would find that the old man in the cottage was still waiting, and his cane was always ready. The iron gates of the cemetery stood open as if they had been waiting for me. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the city skyline, painting the clouds in shades of bruised purple and burning orange. It was the kind of sunset Beatrice used to love. She would have called it a painter sky. I called it the end of a long shift. Marcus stopped the Rolls-Royce at the bottom of the hill. He killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy and sacred. It was a silence earned by noise. The noise of the gala. The noise of the courtroom. The noise of a family breaking apart so it could eventually be put back together. Right. "I will walk from here, Marcus," I said. I opened the door and stepped onto the gravel path. My knee was stiff. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the confrontation with Blake and the emotional wreckage of Nia's sentencing was finally fading. I felt every minute of my 71 years. But I did not lean on my cane. I carried it. I walked up the hill with my back straight because I was coming to see my wife, and she never liked it when I slouched. The headstone was simple: granite, gray, her name, her dates, and the inscription we had chosen together. Love is the only currency that matters. I stood there for a long time. The wind tugged at the hem of my charcoal suit. I took off my hat and held it against my chest. "I am back, B," I whispered to the stone. "It is done." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick document bound in a blue folder. It was the certificate of incorporation for the new parent company. I had signed it an hour ago in Sarah's office while the ink on Blake's conviction was still drying. I knelt down. The grass was cool and damp. I placed the folder on the grave, propping it up against the granite. "Look at the name," I said, tracing the letters with my finger. Beatrice Holdings. It was no longer Carter Holdings. It was no longer Sterling Capital. The name Sterling had been scrubbed from the stationery, ripped from the walls, and erased from the servers. The building, the assets, the future, it all belonged to her now. "I kept my promise, B," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "I told you I would look out for her. I told you I would not let her drown." I paused, looking at the horizon. "But I had to let her sink first," I admitted. "I had to let her hit the bottom." It broke my heart, B, seeing her on that floor, seeing her scrubbing those tiles. She looked so much like you when she was crying. It took everything I had not to pick her up. I took a breath. The air smelled of rain and cedar, but I did not pick her up. Because you and we made a mistake. We gave her too much. We shielded her from the rain so she never learned how to build a roof. I fixed that today. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than the war. Harder than building the business. Harder than saying goodbye to you. I touched the cold stone. She hates me right now, and that is okay. She needs to hate me so she can learn to love herself. She is working, B. She is sweating. She is earning her sleep. She is finally becoming the woman you knew she could be. I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. Slow, respectful steps. I did not turn around. I knew who it was. "Good evening, Mr. Chairman," Jonathan Pierce said softly. "Good evening, Jonathan," I replied, still looking at the grave. He stepped up beside me. He was still wearing his suit, but he had loosened his tie. He held 2 crystal glasses in one hand and a dusty bottle of wine in the other. 1982, he said, holding up the bottle. "From the cellar." I thought it was appropriate. I smiled. It was the year Nia was born, and the year I started the company. "Pour it," I said. Jonathan uncorked the bottle. The sound was a soft pop in the quiet air. He poured the dark red liquid into the glasses. He handed one to me. "To Beatrice," Jonathan said, raising his glass. "To Beatrice," I echoed. We drank. The wine was rich and complex, tasting of dark fruit and thyme. It tasted like victory. "I have the final report, sir," Jonathan said, lowering his glass. "Tell me." "The liquidation of Blake's Sterling assets is complete," Jonathan said. "We seized everything. The condo in the Arts District, the offshore accounts, the watch collection, and the portfolio. And the 30 million I asked, recovered." Jonathan confirmed. "Every cent. We transferred it this afternoon." "Where did it go?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "St. Jude Children Research Hospital," Jonathan said. "And the Inner City Scholarship Fund, just as you directed." "Good," I said, nodding. "And Blake personal effects?" Jonathan smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Ah, yes. The Ferrari. The one he bought with the initial theft." "What happened to it?" "We had a little ceremony at the salvage yard an hour ago," Jonathan said. "We crushed it. It is now a very expensive cube of red metal about the size of a coffee table. I had it delivered to the prison. It is sitting in the visitor waiting area. I thought he might like to see it when he walks in." I laughed. It was a deep, rumbling laugh that felt good in my chest. "That is petty, Jonathan." "It is justice, sir," he corrected. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, drinking the wine and watching the sun disappear. The city lights began to flicker on below us. Somewhere down there in that grid of light, Nia was mopping a floor. And somewhere else in a concrete cell, Blake was realizing that his night was going to be very long and very dark. "You know, Sir," Jonathan said, looking at the folder on the grave, "the board is wondering what your next move is. We have the capital. We have the momentum. Are we going to acquire another firm? Are we going to expand into Asia?" I swirled the wine in my glass. I looked at the name Beatrice on the folder. "No," I said. "We are going to stabilize. We are going to focus on sustainable growth, and we are going to set up a mentorship program." Mentorship, yes. For young entrepreneurs, kids from the bottom, kids who have nothing but hunger and talent. I want to find the next Reggie Carter before the world beats it out of him. Jonathan nodded. "That sounds like a plan, sir." I finished my wine and set the glass down on the grass next to the folder. "But that is for tomorrow," I said. Right now, I have a more pressing need. What is that? Sir Jonathan asked, ready to call the jet or book a reservation at the most expensive steakhouse in the city. I turned to him and grinned, the grin of a man who had nothing left to prove. I am starving, Jonathan, and I do not want foam or truffle oil or tiny portions on big plates. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. What do you want? There is a food truck on 4th and Pike, I said. It is run by a guy named Sal. He makes a smash burger with grilled onions and cheap American cheese that melts all over the wrapper. It costs $6, and it is the best damn thing in this city. Jonathan blinked. You want a burger? I want 2, I said. And fries, greasy ones. I clapped him on the shoulder. Come on, Jonathan, you are buying. Consider it a bonus. I adjusted my hat and tapped my cane on the gravel. Goodbye, Bee, I whispered to the wind. I will bring her back to see you when she is ready. I walked down the hill toward the car. My step was light. The heavy coat of the vagrant was gone. The tuxedo was just clothes. I was just Reggie. I had destroyed a monster. I had saved my daughter. And now I was going to eat a burger. It was a good day. The Rolls-Royce engine purred to life. I climbed in. 4th and Pike Marcus, I said. Yes, sir. As we drove away, I looked back at the cemetery one last time. The stone stood silent and strong in the twilight. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, I slept without dreaming of war. The ledger was balanced, the debt was paid, and the future was wide open. The greatest lie we tell ourselves is that love means shielding people from consequences. It doesn't. True love is having the courage to let them fall so they can finally learn how to stand. I spent years hiding my success to teach humility, but I learned that character cannot be bought, gifted, or inherited. It must be forged in the fire of struggle. Money is simply a magnifying glass. It reveals who you truly are. If you build your life on appearances and greed, you are building on sand. But if you build it on integrity, no storm can ever knock you down. If you believe that respect must be earned and never bought, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice. And tell me in the comments, did I go too hard on Nia, or was it exactly the lesson she needed?